Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. I'm your host, Nicholas Allen, and my guest today is Chris Thompson, former Green Beret, entrepreneur, philanthropist, adventurer, and the owner and operator of KLENR Products, KLENR Products. They make soaps, sundries, and adventures. Organic and natural ingredients, no harmful chemicals ever. Green Beret veteran owned and operated, made in the United States of America. Went a little long today, well over 3 hours, so I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Today's episode is brought to you by the Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley. Precision Wellness Group can help you restore balance, unlock vitality through bioidentical hormone therapy. HRT, TRT, hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, a lot of acronyms, a lot out there, and a lot of information. But all that information you are seeing from those influencers, they are not doctors. Dr. Taylor Bosley is. And he's a Green Beret. So he has the shared background that he understands where you've been, where you want to go, and how to get there. And he can answer your questions because he is an actual doctor. Check them out. I will have links to their website and to Chris Thompson's Business KLENR Products in the show description. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Chris Thompson, welcome to Lesser Known Operators. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, as my viewers well know, I've been in the DMing people like crazy, and you were no exception. Luckily, you had Green Beret in your Instagram bio, so that makes it real easy for me because I thought about it. With the way the internet is, nobody's really going to fake that shit on social media outright because they'll just get eviscerated so fast by people. The internet's undefeated. They'll run a background check on you and find out if you're lying. So I take those as pretty reliable for what people are saying about themselves.
Yeah, I guess nowadays there's quite a few people double checking things. So
Yes, somebody's always doing it. I don't know. I think if you're that upfront with it, that the internet will find you out pretty quick if you're bullshitting.
yeah,
So the system of checks and balances has already done the work for me. So I appreciate you getting back to me and coming on. I got to ask you. So how does it feel when you make something and people like it? Like, how does that make you feel? Because I know how it's been making me feel since I've been doing this show.
um, I don't know. I guess I like to create. I think creating is enjoyable, but I think what is most impactful for me is just having a positive impact on others. And so whether it's actually creating a physical object or creating a post or whatever. Um, yeah, if it's having a positive impact, I feel like it's a huge part of my purpose. And um, yeah, what I feel like it's part of why I'm on planet Earth is to have a positive impact. And so whatever way that looks like, that's what I feel like is most meaningful to me.
Is that positive way transferred over into your shirt there and the soap to counteract some of the negative effects that the industry is having on us?
Yeah, so I started out doing all this really for myself. No intention of ever selling anything. And um, yeah, it's kind of a long story, but the short version is that, when I left active duty, I did contracting for another special operations unit for a couple years, still deploying. And then at the end of that, the wheels were coming off, and I'd done no self-care, emotionally and physically. I was just wrecked. And so, um, I think that's when my greatest hobby started. Uh, and, and that is really just, um, looking into my own health and personal growth. And, My wife even says, like, she thinks that I have no hobbies at all, but I feel like that is that is my only hobby. It's just continual personal growth and taking care of myself in whatever way that looks like. And it's not that I don't like other things. I love to fish and um, be outside and do all these different things. But my life is extremely full in terms of um, not having much other available time, and so I just I don't have a whole lot of room for a lot of other things. And but one thing, just my continued growth uh, is like, even if it's just driving from home to work, listening to something and learning more, um, ways of just bettering myself. And so when I had walked away from all military related things, that's when I found that, yeah, I was just in a terrible spot. And there's a whole lot to it. Um, Now there's a classification for it, which I forget the doctor's name that came up with it, but operator syndrome is essentially what I was experiencing, which is, it's not just like one or two symptoms, it's like a whole list of things. Everything from hypervigilance, anger, depression, um, memory loss, chronic headaches. There's a lot of physical aspects as well, substance abuse, and really most of that was what I had going on. And at the time, the term operator syndrome didn't exist. And I feel like there's still a lot of, maybe it's gotten better now, I'm not sure, but at least healthcare wise, within the special operations community, there weren't, my experience, and this is years ago now, is that this, that type of, um, operator syndrome wasn't something that healthcare providers were familiar with. It was usually like one or two things that guys were dealing with, and it was rare to see somebody that had something, essentially operator syndrome, where it's a whole bunch of things that they have going on. And so being able to treat that was was not something that was in in the wheelhouse of many healthcare providers, at least none that I had seen. And so at the time it was really difficult, but I'm thankful for that experience because it really drove me to take charge of my own health. And I think regardless of what anybody has going on, like how mild or how severe, I think everyone has to take charge of their own health, because for the most part, your doctors are not going to do it for you. You really have to educate yourself um, and learn a lot about, taking charge of your own health. I mean, it's what it comes down to. Um, and so that's what, I started just learning about not only what other veterans had gone through and what they had done to heal themselves, but even non-veterans and what they had gone through and treatments they've tried and, you know, other modalities they've used to heal. And and so there's many aspects, and I went down so many of them, but one of the things that I learned during this time frame was that cancer is one of the leading causes of death within the special operations community. And so, and a lot of that has to do with chemical stress. There's three different types of stresses according to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and all of these can lead to um, ultimately disease like cancer and other health related issues. But there's physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. And if you leave those unchecked, it can totally cause other things in the body to send these alarm bells. And it can come in the form of other diseases or um, organ failures and things like that, hormone imbalances and all kinds of things. And then it just continues. It's like dominoes that continue to fall if left unchecked. And then you're losing quality of life at that point. And yeah, and your health doesn't matter until you start, for some people, it doesn't matter until you start losing quality of life. And then it's the most important thing ever. And so, um, just examples of the different stresses, the physical stress, inability to sleep is just so damaging. And, um, if we're not able to rest, there's, chemicals that build up in the brain throughout the day. And when you sleep, um, it's clearing out a lot of that. And there's so many things associated with sleep. Um, I had a friend who told me that sleep, if people realized how important it was, they would categorize it as a PED, a performance enhancing drug, because recovery and just clarity of mind and performance, mental and physical, uh, so much depend upon sleep. And again, if that goes on long term, it can lead to greater health issues. So that's an example of physical stress, emotional stress, whether it could be loss of a loved one, loss of a child, losing a job, financial hardship. There's all kinds of different emotional stresses. And again, if those things aren't, if you're not able to work through them, if you're not able to process some of those emotions, um, again, a lot of other health issues can manifest. And then the chemical stress within the soft realm, whether it's deploying to countries where there's lots of pollution, the whole burn pit thing where all of the trash and this is still an interesting memory for me, is teaching my first junior uh, how to burn human shit. And like mixing diesel and shit, to burn it. And but I mean, that's kind of some of the conditions in combat. And yeah, you're breathing this stuff in. Not to mention a lot of the shoot houses where I'm sure this stuff has gotten way better in terms of ventilation and all these things now, but at the time, like even going through one school that I went through where it's just tons of shooting, tons of room clearing, explosive breaching, and all that. And you're not the first group to go through these shoot houses. They've been used for years, and so there's tons of heavy metals that have gotten into the room and everything else. And when you're explosive breaching, you're putting all of this back into the air and you're breathing it in. It's getting on your skin, being absorbed through the skin. And even when I went through that course, uh, and this is now 19 years ago, um, one of the medics, one of the 18 Deltas, came and briefed the whole class at the very beginning because we had to sign some paperwork that there would be high lead exposure and um, some of the effects that can have that can have, which we now know that high lead exposure can mimic a lot of the same symptoms that you would experience with TBI or post traumatic stress. And and without proper health care, it can be really hard to differentiate what you actually have going on. So somebody could be treating you for post traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, and the reality is you have high lead levels in your blood. And and but yeah, so yeah, this medic briefed the whole class. He's one of the instructors, and he was saying that this is a lot like astronauts. And I don't know if this is true or not. I've never really looked into it, but this is what he said to us. was that all astronauts who've gone into space and have come back and haven't died like in a car wreck or some kind of odd incident have ultimately developed cancer at some point. And and the reason is because of the high radiation levels when they go out into space. And what he was saying was that, that is something that they know is a part of their job. It's a risk that they take, but they still do the job anyways. And so he was comparing that to what we were doing is that, hey, you're going to have high lead exposure, and this is just a necessary risk that we accept. And it's probably in the long run really not good for you, but it's just something we accept and do anyways. And oddly enough, that was really the first time that was brought into my awareness, um, the chemical exposure side of things. And now I think in that course, they blood test students throughout to make sure that if guys are starting to get higher levels of lead content in their blood, that they can implement measures to mitigate that. Maybe they put them different training environments for a period of time or whatever. I'm not sure, but at least they're paying closer attention to it. So that was when it was first brought into my awareness that, there's a lot of chemical stress that is put on potentially Green Berets. And but the reality was that when I was finishing that school, like had a few weeks left in the school, my team was already downrange, and like as soon as I finished that school, I was getting on a bird and getting back over to Afghanistan. And so uh, was I too worried about lead affecting me? No, because I was about to go back to a place where a whole bunch of people were going to try and kill me for the next several months. And so it wasn't a huge priority of mine. And, paying it because, I've got to survive all this first before I can worry about anything else. Like getting blown up or shot is more likely to kill me than um, lead exposure right now. So, um, but it really came into my awareness at that point. And long story short, after the military, learning that, cancer being one of the leading causes of death in the soft community, um, really started paying attention to what I was putting on my body. Like I mentioned before, there's tons of aspects associated with health and wellness. And I was looking at all of them, but in terms of KLENR, this is one area that I really focused on, me and my wife, for ourselves. We started looking at a lot of natural brands, and even still to this day, there's so many that quite a few ingredients are natural, but they're still using synthetic fragrances to scent with, which are endocrine disruptors. So it's affecting your hormones, and they're, potentially cancer causing. Um, and a lot of people don't know this. Manufacturers don't even have to list anything that goes into scenting their products. So they can put the word fragrance, and hundreds of ingredients can be hidden underneath that word. And um, and so you don't even know what you're getting. You can pay attention to the ingredients all you want, but if they put that word fragrance on there, you truly don't even know what you're putting on your body. And so we started doing a lot of this for ourselves, me and my wife. And then years later, just got to a point to where we could offer it for other people, and making a product that is cleaner, that is all natural. It's naturally scented, so nothing synthetic, and um, and using organic ingredients, and it's made in the USA. And so I feel like that combination is extremely rare to find. And um, yeah, and it was just something that had never planned on offering to others, but I'm very thankful that so many other people get value out of it, and um, for that to be a part of my life.
Yeah, there's been a significant rise in awareness, right, with the podcast era coming, and other shows will have experts on, and they just go on for 5 or 10 minutes about the chemicals or additives that they're allowed to add everything that we have no idea that they're in there. And you start listening to them to go, is there any way to avoid any of these things in my daily life? So, you take out plastics or eating out of plastics. And then, oh, well, they sneak it into this. And there's, are you using this thing? Are you getting the coffee cup with the lining in it? Oh, that'll get plastics into your blood. Okay. So it's crazy the amount of places that microplastics and harmful chemicals and additives have found its way into everything that we do. Um, and but you can't. It's the most important thing is you can't. It's there. Once you know it's there, you can't unknow that it's there. But you can start eliminating things one at a time because there's just too many to tackle all at once. Unless you move to Saskatchewan into a hut and start living off the land and eating everything that you shoot. I'm sure there's somehow microplastics will find you up there, but
Yeah,
it's important to identify this and then start one at a time. Start chipping away at these things because you're probably not going to be able to get them all, but you can start with soap or
yeah,
purifying your water, things like that. Is what do you think that's the way to go about this?
yeah. What I try and tell people is that it's not so much 100% eliminating everything, because, like you said, um, it may be impossible to do that. But what it is about is trying to limit your exposure. And there's a lot of things that we can easily do. Um, if it's a product that you use on a daily basis, whether it's like toothpaste or soap or a hair product, or, something that you're putting on your body. And to me, those are some of the easiest ones to change out. Um, and yeah, it's yeah, I try not to tell people to do, try and completely eliminate. I mean, you can try, but I feel like that becomes overwhelming and something that, yeah, perceivably too hard to achieve. And then you fail at that, and some people feel like if they're failing at that, then it's like, okay, well, then I just give up and whatever. Where it's okay, if I can just start chipping away at some of this and reducing some of my exposure, you're doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, and soap is definitely one thing you put on your body. How how harmful, if the audience at home doesn't know, how harmful are some of the things that are in off the shelf soap at the grocery store or the market?
Yeah. So um, there's a couple things that some other brands do to us. One is that a lot of other soaps aren't even really soaps, they're detergents. And so it's a mixture of synthetic ingredients, and um, they do a job of getting you clean, but they actually remove the natural oils that are on our skin. Um, and
Like a degreaser?
Yeah, so it's stripping away a lot of the natural oils, um, and then which can result in a lot of skin irritation, dryness, itchiness. Um, some of those same chemicals are linked to cancer causing. I mentioned a lot of synthetic fragrances are endocrine disruptors, so it's throwing off all your hormones, and then as those things take place, even just like hormone aspects, it's like the signals that your body is sending, on how to, other parts of your body, on how to behave and how to function. And if you start throwing that stuff off, it just becomes a domino effect of other things. And is it something that is going to happen, like use it once and your body's going to just crash? No, but it's almost like um, a million paper cuts in a way. Is that, something that you're doing over and over and over again? And I see this in other areas too. Is um, you think about stress, where if somebody's stressed about maybe work or family stuff or a combination, and if they're feeling the stress, if they feel it for a day, you know, um, is their body totally wrecked? No, like you may feel it. If it goes on for a week, no. If it goes on for a year, maybe even still not. But left unchecked, eventually the body's gonna say, you know what, I'm tired of this, and this is going on, and I don't like it, and I'm gonna like let you know in other ways, and it's gonna manifest um, in a lot of different ways in the body. And you can see this with alcohol. Is Yeah, you can drink and maybe don't feel the best the next day, but can you still go on living your life? For sure. And you can drink heavily every single day for a year and then stop, and can you still be okay? Yeah, possibly. um, but over time, and I've seen this with friends, is that eventually the body, and I was on the same path myself, is that eventually the body is like, you know what, I can't take this anymore. Like the liver is shutting down, and eventually it's like, that's it. I'm not gonna function optimally anymore. And and if you are still, I mean, if it doesn't result in death, um, I'm not trying to be like too dark, but I mean, it's a reality over, heavy drinking long term. Um, I've lost a teammate and another friend of mine, within the last couple of years from it. And in a similar situation, the body just says like, it's too much. And um, even if you stop drinking at that point and you are, and death doesn't happen, um, you've lost a lot of quality of life. And um, man, it's just, yeah. And I do believe this. I want to get the most out of my life. And even my son, who's 13, uh, I think he saw some video of, maybe it's like a really old guy rock climbing or something like that, and he's like, "Hey, Daddy, that's gonna be you, someday," because I want to keep doing stuff for as long as I can. And um, I don't ever believe in, maybe this is okay for some people, but I don't ever want to retire. I don't ever want to stop and just do walks in my neighborhood and watch Netflix the rest of the day, kind of thing. Um, I want to get the most out of this life that I can. And so, um, if I can do simple things where, if I change out, say, a product that I use every day, um, and know that that's going to be the best for me health wise, then I'm just contributing to being able to get the most out of this life.
I noticed, yeah, like you said, the gym there. I've noticed I'm starting to become the middle-aged guy at the gym. It's an interesting transition. And yeah, but I hope to continue that on and someday still be the old guy at the gym.
Yeah,
Still the strongest, obviously.
there
That's
you go.
my, I have to go even to later today, go and establish dominance and let everybody know who's boss. Um, but I got to get to keep going there. So, um, couple, go back on a couple things though. And I was messaging a guy last night about this, and he said, we were talking about private security and contracting. Do you think that made it worse than if you had just gotten out and done something else? Because he said it was worse. Losing the team environment um, of where he was and kind of being off on his own, kind of having to figure things out in the transition.
I uh, I would say it didn't help, but I don't know. Contracting was really good for me in a way, because it was good and bad. So it was good for the reasons that, in terms of transition, um, it was great. It was perfect for me because I basically went from, um, it was a Friday afternoon. I cleaned my stuff out of the team room. Monday was Veterans Day. And then that Tuesday, I started working as a contractor. And, um, it was a strange environment. Um, it was a mix, a very joint environment. So a mix of all the different branches, a mix of contractors, a mix of DoD civilians, and a lot of um, interagency partners, and just very. I felt like everybody was, whatever their job was, they were working at a very high level, and they brought a lot of experience doing wherever they worked before, um, showing up. And so, and still be in the special operations realm, and still doing something important. And actually, I felt like more important. I felt like I had a greater effect, the work that I did as a contractor, than what I did on active duty. And I don't mean that to like downplay anything that we're doing on active duty, but I say that to say how significant the work was and how impactful it was. And I feel like it was true counterterrorism, where we're stopping people going from one country, um, where they had just gotten whatever training, for example, leaving that country, going to another, and crossing one of our borders and conducting some type of attack within the US. And so you're not just fighting guys that are trying to kill you, you're stopping guys that are trying to kill, like, at that point, like, had a newborn son at home. Um, like, these are families that, they have no role in the war whatsoever. And and essentially you're protecting them from that. And so to me that's huge. Um, and so to be a part of something so impactful, to still be within the special operations community, and I lived in the same house that I lived in while I was on active duty. So I didn't even move. One of my old teammates, we ended up working on the same contract. So I was with one of my old teammates, and um, even, yeah, I was still going to like team parties, with my old teammates and everything. And a lot of times when my old team was deployed, I was deployed too. Like, we weren't together or anything like that, but um, yeah, in that way, it was really good in terms of transition. Uh, but at the same time, it was really bad in terms of transition, because for several years, I thought I was a civilian already, and I had transitioned out of the military. And the reality is that things had not changed enough for me to recognize I had not transitioned really enough to, I hadn't really been out in the civilian world. And yeah, I was still around military people and all that all the time, um, and so that way it was bad because I thought I was like I've been a civilian for several years. Like this is like there should be no issue going to do another civilian thing, and I was so wrong, man. I think contracting just delayed a lot of the inevitable, and the reality is, I know, like, if I'm honest with myself, is a lot of the stuff was already happening on active duty, and um, matter of fact, like, I guess I'm starting to say this is and a lot of my old teammates don't even know this is that some of the injuries and things that I had on active duty um, were enough for me to be medically retired, and I just I just got out. And matter of fact, I don't even think I knew much about the process of medical retirement, and the way that I got out was extremely rare, I think too. And so um, that played a role in it, and yeah, I was just delaying a lot of um, what I had going on, and I think it was just more amplified in a way when I got home. I say home when I moved back to Texas. Is that now I'm away from everything. I'm away from my community, and even my wife too. Like, I mean, we had to restart our whole lives entirely over. Where felt like we're incredibly successful, both of us, in a lot of what we were doing professionally, and then personally our lives seem to be really good, and um and then just walked away from all of that and hit the reset button on it. Not only hit the reset button on it, but it's like, okay, now you have all this shit that you didn't take care of, myself, to deal with. And it was incredibly tough.
Yeah. I feel you there. Moving from Washington to Wisconsin and isolating myself from
Mm,
everybody and this cold turkey from group. These are the people you hang out with every day.
yeah.
You're around the people you want to be around with every day, and then the next day you're not at all. And you go, maybe this was a bad idea. Uh, I don't have any friends. And I just noticed it recently how bad I did that. Is when I started this, I had like 9 GBs in my phone because nobody takes pictures or writes anything down because we're dumb like that. But now from starting this, I got it back and go, man, I really didn't know anybody when I left. I didn't have anybody's contact. I never stayed in touch with anybody. I
Yeah.
lost that, and you lose that sense of community that you worked so hard to build up to get to, and then you just get in your car and drive off posts, and that's it. Bye, guys. Bye,
Yeah.
friends. Now I got to go make new friends, and new friends are tough to make in the civilian world.
Yeah. And those same guys too, you're spending more time with them than you are your family, because at least for me, when I mean we're deployed all the time, and then when we weren't deployed, um, you're gone for training, doing team training or whatever, and so you're for me, I was easily more with them than I was with my family, and the support, it's an informal support system that's in place there where I know if like I was deployed and my wife ever needed anything that um the other wives from the team or whatever, they would find a way to make sure everything was taken care of at home if help was ever needed, and vice versa. And so um it's in a way it's closer than family, and then you yeah, and then it's just totally gone. And there's nothing that um, out in the civilian world that you can totally backfill that with something that is similar, I feel like.
I, and what I've been thinking about this, I think that's there in the civilian world and with your, family or whatever have you once you get out and you're not in that setting anymore. But it's so much easier because let's get the team environment, right? We all know what each other know, how we learned it, where we came from, what training we've had, pretty much similar background. Not all the way similar backgrounds, but militarily, we got a similar background, and we'd all be there for each other, and you don't have to ask. So it's all just assumed, and you do these things for each other without many times without even asking. Where that exists in the civilian world, but nobody wants to ask or be a burden to their friends or family when their friends or family would happily help them out. But you're not going to ask them because I don't know, you don't feel as close to them like you did with the boys or with the boys' family. Like, is that like we put up this wall of like, I'm not going to ask for help, but everybody will volunteer that help on a team.
Yeah, I do think that's true. Is that, and it's something that is still challenging for me, is that asking for help. Um, and yeah, my wife sent me this thing. This was last fall when I moved into um, this business location that I'm in now. And yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that I do myself because I just, it's hard to ask for help. And she sent me this picture of this guy moving a couch, and he's carrying one end of the couch, and then he's got like a rolling office chair underneath the other end of the couch, to so he can move it himself. And she's like, "This is you," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And um, I don't know why that is, but I think the thing that makes it more challenging in terms of that support from others when you leave a team is that in a way we are more isolated. Like whether, um, I've been very intentional to be around other people. And even I did some work from home for years, but a lot of times I would go to a coffee shop just to be around other humans. Um, and so I think even if you are going into an office space every day kind of thing, um, I think there's just a closeness. A lot of people don't even know their own neighbors, for example, and um, and if you do, I feel like there's just not they're not injected to your life as much. And what keeps coming to mind is it's a tribal aspect of things, is to where if you looked at a lot of indigenous cultures, um, or how a lot of us lived years ago, is everything was tribal, is that you were very much a part of this small community, and you had a specific role to play, and so did everyone else, and everyone was reliant upon each other for their survival, whether it was protection of this tribe, getting food for this tribe, water, whatever, and and so you're kind of, if anyone is struggling with something, like, because there is such a deep closeness with everyone in that community. And if you're struggling with something and it's a part of your role, everyone knows because it's affecting the community. And I would say that I can be going through the darkest whatever, and my neighbors will potentially have no idea, because it's not directly impacting them until it does. And when you're on a team, if something's off, it's going to be very apparent to the people around you because you are so close to them, because you are so involved in. And back to that tribal aspect, is that the things that you're doing or not doing are having an effect on potentially that community's lives, that team's, the lives of that team. And so I think that's where maybe that same kind of support is available in the civilian world, but it's less obvious that um, somebody may be going through something and need that support, and therefore it puts a lot more on you to say, hey, I need some help with something. And I think that's where the challenge can come from.
Yeah. And in the military, everybody's in only the military. They're not doing anything else. They're not going 1,000 different directions or different careers
Right.
and different paths in life, schedules, all this other stuff. General framework is really this kind of the same. I know it's not the same, but it's kind of the same. Whereas in civilian world, everybody's doing different shit all the time, going different
Hmm.
places, and so yeah, I can I can see that. But as long as chip away at one thing at a time, like we said, and try and make it better. Try and work on those relationships with the people around you. Um, like you said, soap. Start with one. Fix your soap, and the health aspect, right? Putting down the bottle, stopping drinking,
Yeah.
so you're actually able to recover and get some sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and those all come with like hard lessons of feeling like shit, you know. Um, but this experience that we get, but all that's got to come to a head, right? Because whatever started you on this path was you. Did you enlist before 9/11 or right around?
Yeah. I joined the reserves right out of high school in 2000 under the delayed entry program. And then I wouldn't go active duty. So I do basic training in AIT and some school. And when I came back from AIT, I told the same recruiter who put me in the reserves, I told him that, and this is all before 9/11. I told him that I was like, hey, I want to go active duty and I want to reclass to infantry. And I hadn't even signed into my reserve unit for my first drill yet.
Did you
And
go to basic already though?
yeah, I was done with basic and AIT. Um, and, it's going to be like another month or something before my next drill or my first drill. And I told my recruiter I wanted to go active duty, and he's like, no, no, you don't. Don't do that. And I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, that's what I want to do. And he's like, no, don't do that. Like, you're in a good school. Just do school, do the reserve thing, and um, don't go active duty. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, I still want to go active duty. And he's like, okay, that's fine, but you have to wait until your reserve unit releases you. And they can't release you from the reserves until you've been there for at least 6 months. And then it's on them to release you from the reserves. And once you're released, then you can sign a contract to go active duty. And so I did another semester at school and just waiting for my time, for that time to end so I could be released from the reserves. And then 9/11 happened, and then I had drill that same weekend. And um, let me back up. The reserves wasn't the most positive experience for me, and uh, because it was before 9/11. Uh, Maybe I felt like people didn't feel that they had a true mission or real purpose, and therefore didn't really take it serious. And uh and it just, looking back on it now, I know that's like, it's not one of my values. Excellence is one of my values, and showing up to not do something with a purpose or give your best in doing it is is not a good fit for me. And I didn't want to be around people who didn't really give a shit about what they were doing. And
But it sounds like you found that out at basic training even before you got to reserve unit. Because if you finished basic and then went to your recruiter and went, "I want to go active duty," what happened there to make you want to make that decision?
when I joined the reserves, I really didn't know anything about the Army. And I know this is a Marine thing, but you know, that saying where it's everyone's a rifleman kind of thing. That's kind of what I thought about the Army, is that like everybody is like an infantryman, and but you also do like some mechanic shit, or you also do this finance stuff, or you know, whatever it is. And
No,
yeah, the only thing I really knew about the Army was that I had two uncles that were in Vietnam, and the only thing they ever really said anything about it, anything military related, to me was I don't think they wanted me to join, and the other was they told me not to volunteer for anything, and um, I took that very serious. And looking back on it, I think there are reasons why they told me that, but and it was probably very useful for their experience. But I found out that volunteering for everything was the best thing to do. And
absolutely. I
yeah,
volunteered for everything that came up.
yeah. And uh, it took me towards the end of AIT to recognize that, where in AIT there was, you know, one of the drill sergeants would come by and it's like, hey, you know, we need two volunteers or whatever. We need two guys to go do whatever. And there was one dude that volunteered for everything. And throughout all of AIT, I'm like, man, this dude's so stupid, you know, because it's shit work that they keep giving him. You know, it's like, okay, you know, go clean the latrines, or like go pick up, you know, do police call outside. I mean, it's like, uh, I was like, man, you know, it's so stupid for this guy to keep volunteering for this, because this is not, um, there's no benefit to volunteering. And at the very end, they gave one award to everyone who graduated AIT. I don't remember what kind of award it was. It was like a RCOM or something. I don't know. And they gave it to this guy, and and it was in that moment that I recognized, and it's not the things are about awards. It's that I recognized that this guy was going somewhere. You know, that whether like in his career he was going to do something, and I don't know what happened to that guy, but there's no doubt in my mind that he probably went on to do something great. It may have just been as a mechanic, have a heavy wheel vehicle mechanic. He went on to be maybe one of the greatest heavy wheel vehicle mechanics, and then leaders to his soldiers and everything else. Who knows? But or he may have gotten out and he's doing something great in the civilian world. But I recognized um, that volunteering for things was the route to go, and that ultimately that's going to benefit you the most. And so, um, so yeah, I forget. Oh,
So
so when I got back to your original question, like recognizing the I wanted to go active duty. Yeah, I knew nothing about the Army. And so 2 weeks into basic training, like there's just something I was like, man, this is what I want to do. Like I want to go, like this seems to be a good fit. Like I love this. And I had a drill sergeant at that time who was, he had come from the 82nd. He was the only drill sergeant that we had that had a CIB. So he's the only drill sergeant that had been in combat. And um, he's an infantry guy. He was a Desert Storm guy, and there were times where I would catch him giving shit to the other drill sergeants. You know, like, hey, you know, where's your combat patch, or you know, like those kinds of things. And um, but you know, hearing this guy talk about the infantry and um, and combat and things like that, and his experiences. And he just taught me so much just about life in general. And I felt like he had, I wa looking back on this, I can say this now. It wasn't like a thought at the time, but he had more to offer than the other drill sergeants, and he also expected more out of us. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to do more, and this guy had done that. And in my mind, I was like, okay, the 82nd is the best unit in the Army, and being an infantry guy, that's it, like that's the best thing you can do. It's like, you know, in terms of excellence and being around people that maybe are like this drill sergeant, like this is it. This is where I need to go in the Army. And and uh, so that's kind of what started me down that path. And the interesting thing about this drill sergeant is that uh, when we were in basic training, he told us that he was going to be leaving for a portion of it because he was going to go to some kind of assessment course or something like that. And then he was going to go learn Spanish, and then he was going to learn about communications equipment or something like that. And so he was going to be out for a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And fast forward several years later, I'm in the 18 Fox course, and I don't know how I was talking about this same drill sergeant, and the guy sitting next to me, he's like, I said his name, and he's like, Dirty Joe? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't know him as that, He's like, yeah, man. He was in the 82nd, was in Desert Storm, and he's over at Third Group now. He's in Third Battalion, and he didn't end up being a commo guy, and didn't end up getting Spanish as his language. But I didn't realize what he was talking about was SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and then I think he ended up becoming an 18 Bravo. And um, but yeah, we weren't in the same battalion together, but we ended up being in Third Group the same time. And I found him on Facebook years later. I'd been out at that point, and I sent him a message, really just thanking him because uh, he really put me on the path that I ended up taking in active duty. And yeah, there's stuff that he taught me then that I still use today. And um, yeah, really, really thankful for him for sure. But yeah, it was definitely within very early on in basic training, probably within that first 2 weeks, that I recognized that I want to go active duty and I want to do something more. Um, and being a mechanic in the Army is okay, but I knew that there was something more that I could pursue. And initially that looked like the infantry, but in the 82nd, and that kind of evolved over time. But yeah, it's definitely where it started.
Yeah. Drill sergeants have a lot of influence over people just seeing what the Army's like right away. Mine, I mean, this wasn't even a couple weeks. He goes, dude, you're not going to like the regular Army. So just go to selection as soon as you can.
That's
Just
awesome, man.
don't worry about what command says. You just go to the brief and go, and you'll be fine because you're it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. So that's what I did. I don't know, just right away. Like, I'm going to go, and here we are having a podcast about special operations way years down the road, talking about drill sergeant back in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So
Yeah, that's so good, man.
yeah,
It's
well,
funny. I had um, so when I went active duty, my contract said day one, week one of basic training, infantry OSIT.
so you just
And
had to do
so,
basic twice.
sort of.
Cool. Yeah, the first one doesn't.
So I did it, of course, the first time, Fort Jackson, and the second time, Fort Benning. And when I got there, and I'm like, okay, whatever, I guess I'm just gonna do this all over again, even though I did this like this maybe a year and some change ago. And but it's like, okay, whatever. And I'm on the bus and we get to Fort Benning and all the drill sergeants are yelling for you to get off the bus. And I'm just like, oh, what did I get myself into? Like, why am I doing this? And they all bring us into a room and they're like, hey, who here has prior service? I'm like, I think I do. And so they started asking me a bunch of questions and they're like, hey, if you can pass a PT test, we'll move you up to week 3. I was like, okay. So I do a PT test and they're like, okay, we'll start you at week 3. And they're like, if you can provide a weapons qualification card, we'll move you up to like, I don't know, week 6 or 5 or I don't know, something like that. And so I was like, okay, I don't have any of that on me, but let me call back to my reserve unit. And so I get a hold of somebody at my reserve unit and I'm like, hey, look, you know, I need a weapons qualification card, certification, whatever. And so that I don't have to do more of basic training over again. And they're like, hey, this is before like things were so digital like they are now. Like,
Yeah, they couldn't
if it was
text you a
today,
picture. You're on a payphone, right?
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where you pay for the like little cards and yeah, or call collect. And um, yeah, I did have a cell phone at that time, but a smartphone didn't exist. And yeah, I had a phone, but it wasn't even turned on. Um, because people just didn't carry phones like that. Not everyone had a cell phone at that time. And but yeah, they're like, yeah, we can't seem to find anything, so sorry. I'm like, bro, hook me up, like make something.
Just
And
fucking write the shit down.
yeah. And so I essentially started at week 3, and there were 2 other guys that were in my same situation, and both guys were in the reserves or guard beforehand, and both were reclassing infantry and hoping to go SF. And so um, all 3 of us, we passed the PT test, but just started at week 3. And and those 2 guys, and this is probably not the most sexy thing to talk about, basic training stories, but those 2 guys were treated so different than what I was, man. They one of them had their own room, another one had an open bay to himself, minus some like guys that got hurt during basic training and they're waiting to recycle into the next class. And um, they kind of had nights and weekends off, or maybe not weekends, but nights off. And initially, they threw me into the bay with all the other brand new privates, and I'm doing like the same shit over again. And I had rank and stuff on my uniform and all that, and my drill sergeant was like, "Hey, take all that shit off and like." Take that all off your class A's, off your BDUs and all that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And where the other guys, they wore their rank and yeah, had all that stuff, had to cut it all off or whatever. And um and eventually they moved me over into that open bay, but it would be at like 2 a.m. One of the privates would come over and they'd be like, hey, drill sergeant sent us over here to wake you up because the whole platoon is getting smoked and you have to be a part of it. And I'm like, fuck, man. And, and the other two guys, they didn't get messed with at all. But I had one drill sergeant from there he was really good. He was, he would try and, um, I can think of one time where, he would pull me aside and, um, kind of just talk to me like a human and, and about the future and about SF and those kinds of things. And one of the other drill sergeants, I can remember him saying this still to this day, where he's like, Green Beret to mechanic. I don't see it happening. He would say shit like that all the time. And, uh, but I mean, who knows what that guy's backstory is? He could have gone to selection and never made it, or, it just had this like ongoing
Probably
hate for
did.
SF guys.
He probably quit on the second day,
Yeah.
for some
Or,
reason.
yeah, failed the PT test, at the
20% of the
start.
people that go to selection fail the PT
Yeah.
test, for everybody listening at home. So there's a 1 in 5 chance if somebody's telling you a story about not making it selection that they failed the fucking PT test. So,
Yeah.
take everything with a grain of salt. No, it's interesting, as we think back on the career, right? Which stories stick in your head? Like you did crazy shit in SF, and you did, like those good memories of stories. You're like, ah, it's interesting what we remember. And it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it's not a sexy story to somebody else; it's important to you. Like the the fucking greatest moment of my career was not graduating. It was getting handed that piece of paper that said I was selected. I could still close my eyes and see that sitting there, that moment, and be right there. That's the one where it's like, okay, the past is gone. I get to do what I want to do now. And it's up
Wow.
to me to fail or pass from this point on. It's all up to me. Because before that, I was up to the regular army, but now I got to make my own path. It was all fucking the decisions and how much effort I put into it. But before that, it wasn't. So that's the greatest moment of my career. So it's contrary
That's
to what a
awesome.
lot of people putting the beret on or getting the tab or all this other shit. That's for me is it. So, but yeah, so whatever stories are important to you, they're important to you. I don't. That's what the show's all about, man. You know,
Yeah. When you got selected, when you found out that you were selected, were you did you have a feeling that, man, this can go either way, or like, I think I got this, you know?
I knew that he knew that I knew sitting down, and he was like tried to be cocky about it and like downplay it, but every page that he turned, he's like, okay, and you did pretty well in this, and then you did really well in this. And he looks at me, he's like, do I need to keep going? And I said, just give me the sheet, man. He's like, congratulations, you've been selected. And he knew, I knew, and he knew. And so but I killed it. Like, but I had to go twice. I fucked it up the first
Really?
time. I couldn't bend my knee. I hurt my knee, and my leg wouldn't bend, and I got pulled to land nav. And the catcher's like, "You're done." I was like, "I can make it." He's like, "Bend your knee." I was like, "I can't make it." So
Yeah.
I was done. I felt like such a loser, and trained up, went back, and fucking killed it. Like I knew exactly what was going to happen. There was only one difference, was the last day. That was the only difference in the two selections, and that was it. All gas, nothing left on the table at selection. There, did it, passed, got my sheet, got out of there, went back to my unit, and became one of those ghosts that now walk the halls of 2nd Battalion, 18th Field Artillery Regiment, like the
Yeah.
guy that went a few years before me, who was like this myth, this mythical creature. Oh yeah, somebody went and he passed and he went off to do all this crazy shit. Now my ghost walks the halls of that fucking decrepit building. I'm probably still on somebody's NCOER for having taken a selection soldier that got selected, but you'd have to be in the regular army to get that joke.
Yeah. You know what I think is really interesting, and maybe you have awareness of this, is that I think it's incredibly significant to have gone to selection twice and gotten selected. if you think about every SF guy who's been selected, if they finished SFAS and at the end of it were told, hey, you need to come back another time, the percentage that would come back and do it another time, I don't know what it would be, but I guarantee you there's people that made it, wore the beret and the tab and everything, that if they were told, hey, we want you to come back, but you didn't make it this time, that I'm certain there's a percentage that would be it. That would be their last trip to selection and wouldn't come back. So
It
I
wouldn't be zero. It wouldn't be
yeah,
zero. It would be somebody. Some people would do it, but yeah, I generally think the people that are going to make it will make it. They'll find a way to figure out how to do it. Um, whether it's now you can get a training program or get a coach or get the information. You can't get the exact information, but you can get the rough information of what you need to do to get there, and then the rest is up to you.
yeah,
Um, if you're a dickhead, there's not a lot people can do for you, and you're going to
yeah.
find that out there, and maybe change your answers for when you go back. But yeah, uh, I say I failed as early as you can, and that was it. That was the only bump in the course. There was never another moment after that. But that's a big failure, going to selection, not making it, and going back to your regular Army unit. Um,
Oh, dang. I didn't
you
even
know,
think about that, man.
yeah. So I had this big bump in the road right
Yeah.
away, and then after that, it was there was no doubt in my mind, except for that seven. It was either 7 or 7 minutes and 15 seconds of when that time fuse was burning. I reconsidered my entire life during that time of everything I'd done wrong. It's like fuck for 7 minutes out there, just standing there. The cadre are staring at you. You're looking at your watch. You're looking at them. They're not saying anything, and you're going, I don't fucking know what's gonna happen here. But other than that, that was it. Good to go. But
Yeah, I think I had two 2.5 moments in the Q course, where I didn't know how it was going to shake out. Um, the least of them was during the 18 Charlie course, like the whole, then it was called Calc in Place. I don't know what it's called now, but
yeah, it's still.
okay. Yeah, where you're having to do all this math with no calculator, and I'd say the engineer aspect of it like very much suits my personality, but I'm just so bad about math. I don't know what it is. I'm just not good at math, and I never have been. And I feel like I've gotten worse as time has gone on, but I made it. Like if you had to have a for that test, if you had to have say like a 74 to pass, I think I had like a 75 or something. And
Come on, man.
across the board, it was the only area that I just maxed the minimum in a way. Everything else like I did well at, and this was just my huge weak area. Um, but the other two where I was actually worried if that was going to be it for me in the Q course was in selection, during the STAR course. And I know it changes all the time, but for mine, it was 4 days, and um, on the third day, if you got so many points, um, you didn't have to do the fourth day. Um, and so the first day, I got all of my points. The second day, I got all of my points. The third day, I was on my way. I just needed one more point, and then I was going to get a day off and just be able to like recover and not do the fourth day of the STAR. And I'm on my way, and I'm busting through a draw, and I know people use this technique, and maybe it's the preferred technique, is to skirt around draws and like bodies of water and all that, but like my style is just straight line and just push through it, swim, float through it, like just fight the draw. I don't know. It's probably not the preferred technique, but it's what was working for me. And I was in this draw and like fighting it for forever. And I come across another candidate, and he's like, "Hey man, do you know where you're at?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm lost." And you're not supposed to talk to anybody when you're out there doing land nav. And so I was like, "Hey man, well, pull out your map and I'll show you where you're at." And he's just staring at me, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, this is a cadre." And uh, that was my thought, because he's not pulling his map out or anything, and then he doesn't say anything more, and I'm like, okay, so he's not a cadre. And so I pull out my map and I show him where he's at and that kind of thing, and I'm maybe like, oh, I can't be, you know, maybe like it's probably less than 800 meters from the last point I need to get, and then I'm done. And so I show this guy where he's at. I put my map, I carried it in my top, my BDU
Oh,
top, and put it back in my top. And then I walk like another 100 meters, and I'm out of the draw. And I'm like, okay, I'm so close to being done with the star course. I'm just gonna have like a little celebration moment for myself. I'm gonna take my ruck off. I'm gonna drink some water, and then do one last map check, and then finish this thing out. And so drop my ruck, and then I'm like looking for my map, and I can't find it. And my map and my scorecard were all in one Ziploc bag, and my protractor and all that was all together. And I'm like, oh, like I've got to find this thing. And so I left my ruck and my rubber duck, my little dummy M4, and just started clover leafing that draw area that I just come out of for hours. And I found all kinds of shit. I found like a Gore-Tex top. Um, I found um, um, iPro, all kinds of stuff in this draw. And I never found my scorecard or map again. And so when we got to that time limit, you're supposed to walk to a hardball road. I walk to the road, and the cadre comes picks me up, and the first thing he asks is like, "Hand me your scorecard," and I'm like, "Hey, cadre, I don't have it," and he's like pissed, And I'm like, "Oh fuck, man, this is it." That's it. They're gonna kick me out, and he's kind of um it's kind of odd, you know, um, because I felt like cadre during selection they weren't really assholes or anything, or spending too much time chewing you out or anything like that. But thinking back on it, it was almost like a feeling of like he's real disappointed in me, and just pissed about that. And I'm like, and like this conversation's going. I'm the only dude that he picked up, and on whatever area I was in. And so I get back, and in the corral where they have everybody, and they're letting me do another day. And that next day only needed to get 2 points to successfully complete the star course. Because if you got so many in 3 days, it was a smaller number than in the 4 days. And so, but on that fourth day, I went out, and I want to say I ended up getting 3 points. I know I didn't stop at the minimum that I needed, because I wanted to, if like I got to the end of selection and for whatever reason I went in front of a board and they gave me shit about losing my map and all the stuff, is that I could say, yeah, I did lose it, but I want to show you guys that I know how to land nav and I can do this. And my example of that was by doing more than what was required of me. But it never came to that point. And um, it was never brought up after that. And I made it. And the only other time I got a no-go on something in the course was during SEER school. And um, for my evasion team, I think I was the only Q course student, because SEER was somewhat relatively new to the Q course, and it used to not be a part of the Q course. And so I had an Apache pilot, an interrogator from 10th group, and two tabbed SF guys. One was a team sergeant, and the other one was working over at um, like civil affairs or something. He had been in 7th group. Amazing guys. Um, but there's this test where you have to build a fire and boil water in a certain amount of time, and you're individually tested. But my evasion team, we were like, okay, you go get some of like the bigger sticks, and you go get some of the smaller stuff, and you go get some of the kindling, and that kind of thing, and we'll just divvy it all up. And so we did that. And when it came to build my fire, um, me and this other team sergeant, I think he was might have been from first group. Um, there was like very little like kindling type stuff that you need to like start a fire and then start adding on bigger stuff. And so, needless to say, we got a no-go on, boiling this water in a certain amount of time. And I'm like, am I really going to make it to the end of the Q course? And, uh, I'm not sure where SEER is at now. I think it's probably like earlier on in the Q course, right?
I don't know now. I was just talking to somebody. I think it's still in the middle after SUT now.
Okay. Was at the very end
Yeah, they
that
stuck it
I
on
went
the
through.
end right back when you were going through, and they're like, "This will be fine," and people were graduating and then going to SEER.
Okay. Yeah. So, uh, um, I was like, man, am I really going to be days away from finishing the Q course? The whole thing, and boiling water is going to be the thing that gets me. And they allowed you to, you had one opportunity to retest. And so during evasion, they pulled me and this team sergeant aside at whatever site we're at. And they're like, okay, you guys have to retest on building this fire and boiling water. And it may not have been as big a deal as what I made it out to be in my head, but uh,
Student stress is a form of psychosis, um,
yeah,
because you can just, okay, candidate, hey, where are we at on the map? And you fucking, I don't even know who I am anymore. What do you mean? What's a map? One
yeah,
cadre explained it to me once, and he goes, we were in Charlie course. He's fine. I think we were all done at that point. He's like, just don't let the student stress get you. And we're like, what the fuck? He's like, I don't know what you guys do, but you guys get this shit in your head where yes, you have to accomplish the task, but then there's this other thing that fucking creeps in, and you guys forget everything you just did over the last year and a half, and how to conduct yourselves, and then you shit the bed like perfectly capable, and then you fucking forget everything that you've learned or worked for, and you make a mistake. So student stress is real.
yeah. There's one school that I went to while on a team. And I think they called it the stress shoot. Um, I mean, you are being evaluated, and it is a pass or fail event like 2 weeks into this course. And if you don't pass it, that's it. You're kicked out of the course. Um, and then the attrition rate it's kind of high when you think about it, because I think we started with maybe 60 something guys in this course. And by the end of it, it's maybe around 30 or so that would graduate, and which is really high to think about. These are SF guys that they're on a team, have deployed, and all this, and but that stress shoot, you're essentially shooting and moving, you know, and I mean, you're having to apply a lot of definitely fundamentals, but weapons manipulation and transitions and things like that, um, and someone said that it's nothing really stressful, doing the shoot. There's no real aspect that's stressful other than the stress that you put on yourself. When people start putting this like idea of like, man, whether I finish this school or not is hanging on me successfully completing this short little stress shoot, and so then people start, yeah, it's this added stress. And but I think it's a good thing too, because it's really testing. I mean, because it's hard to simulate combat stress other than, those kinds of things. If like internally you put your own stress on yourself and create this artificially stressful environment, then you can really see how someone is going to perform in the closest conditions to combat that you can make.
Yeah, short of sticking an EpiPen in somebody's leg,
Right.
uh, physical stress with exercise and working out, getting your heart rate up is probably the best we're going to do. I don't know if the commander's going to sign off on giving everybody a shot of adrenaline and
Right.
then, okay, go shoot now. Uh, the risk assessment's going to be too high on that one, sir.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a great time in the course. I had a lot of fun. Maybe I should have picked Echo. I would have learned something that's applicable in the civilian world instead of shit I already knew because I knew all the construction stuff, um, and then the demo portion. That's not really very few situations that fits into other than Fourth of July. Um, around where I'm at. So maybe I should have
Yeah.
picked something else. But I was only focused on getting the beret. That was it. Focused 100%. What is and I say I was in the first easy class. What's the easiest path to get there? I'm going to do that. So we did it. No doubts along the way. You know, shaky. You're always have that student stress, but did it,
Sure.
got it, and that was it. Why did you choose to go to selection though? Because did you get to go to the 82nd like you wanted to, or
No.
no? Okay,
So so I mean, left up to my own decisions, I probably would have ended up in the 82nd. But I had a friend of mine that um, went to high school with. He joined the Army right out of high school, and um, he ended up going to Ranger Battalion. And he came back on leave after I'd come back from basic training and all that. And he's like, "No, man, 82nd's not the best unit in the Army. You got to go to Ranger Battalion. That's where it's at." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he was just telling me about it, and I'm like, "Man, that does sound like the best." And so I fought and fought and fought to get a RIP contract. Back then it was Ranger Indoctrination Program. So that, then I think it was like 2 weeks of a kind of a selection to get into Ranger Battalion. And that's really what I was fighting for, was for a RIP contract. And even my company commander in the reserves, we were doing training on Fort Bragg, and part of our annual training. And I can remember in the PX or something, or the shop at, and like there's flyers for SF, and he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, this is what you need to do. You need to go SF." And I was like, "Thanks, sir, but I'm going to go to Ranger Battalion." Like, I don't. I mean, I knew nothing about SF, but like all I knew was Ranger Battalion was the best unit in the Army, and that's where I'm going now. I thought it was the 82nd, but now I know it's Ranger Battalion. And so, um, it's kind of a long story, but I saw some recruiters here in town, and I told them I wanted a RIP contract, and they're like, "No, we're not going to do that." And they're like, "Hey, check out this 18 X-ray, this SF video. Like you can go instead of going to Ranger Battalion, you can go be a Green Beret." And I'm like, "No, I don't really care to watch that. Like, I know what I want to do." And they're like, "Okay, we'll show you the Ranger video, but first you got to watch this one." I was like, "Okay, fine." And then it came time to go down to MEPS to sign a contract, and all these kids are waiting to get on the bus to go drive 2 hours into Houston to do the whole MEPS thing and sign their contract. And one of these recruiters pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey, so and so's telling me that you're not going to sign anything unless it's a RIP contract." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Okay." And so then some E7 recruiter comes out and like pulls me to the side, and we're just going back and forth for a while. And he's like, "Hey man, I'm not going to send you if if you're only going to sign a RIP contract." And I'm like, "Okay, well then don't send me because I'll find another recruiter, and I'll go to another recruiting office." And eventually he's like, "Okay, you can get on the bus." And like all these kids are like waiting to leave, and like I'm holding them up for like an hour, as I'm like going back and forth with the recruiters. So they put me on the bus, go down to Houston, and I I go to start doing the whole in processing thing that they do, and somehow my my paperwork didn't make it down to Houston. And so like I couldn't sign shit, you know? And I couldn't even get the opportunity to see what they would offer me. And so I called my roommate at the time and I'm like, "Hey man, like I can't do anything else here. I'm stuck here in Houston and the bus is not coming till the next day to pick up everybody after they sign their contracts." I was like, "Hey man, can you come pick me up?" And so he drove down to Houston, he picked me up, and the recruiter calls me. He thinks I'm still in Houston, and I'm like, "No man, like I got a ride. I'm coming back." He's like, "Hey, look, like you have three options." He's like, "You can go needs of the Army infantry, active duty," which I didn't want to do needs of the Army anything. He's like, "You can go active duty as a mechanic, needs of the Army." He's like, "Or you can do this SF baby program and go infantry, go to airborne school, and then go to selection." And and I got off the phone with them, and man, it's crazy what you remember. I can remember my roommate saying, he's like, "Hey man, maybe you just need to change your dream." And I just thought about it the whole drive back and just decided that maybe I need to change my dream. And then, and I'm thankful that it worked out the way it did. I think going to SF was the best fit for me. And um, yeah, it was the best fit for me. And but that's how I ended up going down that path. And I think this is life too, is that sometimes you're given all these signs of, "Hey, this is what you need to do." And you can ignore that as much as you want. And then it's just going to hit you harder and harder until finally it's like, "Oh, okay, I need to make this adjustment." And I think that was the case for me.
What year was this?
That was 2002.
Two. Okay. So the X-ray program is brand new.
Yeah.
Um, so you went to basic right out of high school, and then you didn't get to a reserve unit, went back to basic again, infantry. Were you on an X-ray contract at that point? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so you got back to infantry one site unit training on an X-ray contract, and there couldn't have been very many X-rays there because
There just the other 2 guys that were prior service,
Okay.
that were with me, so it was just 3 of us total. I don't even know if they had maybe they had seen some 18 X-rays come through or not, I don't know, but we were the only ones and, like, that I knew of, period, like, and I bounced around from different companies, you know, um
You're you're the earliest X-ray we've had on the show, and
Okay.
2004, 5, 6, and 7 is where most of the guys fell. So, um, and for my audience, they're well accustomed to the brutality that the cadre inflicted upon the X-rays in those years. How was SOP-C or the Q course for you early on? Was it as bad as the guys had it in 2004, 2005?
I mean, I don't think so, but I could be wrong, you know? Uh, I've seen there's a video on YouTube going around that it's like seems like it's an hour long of just clips of guys around maybe the 2004, 5 time frame going through SOP-C. Um, and it looks like, looks awful, you know? But, you know, when I went through, we were treated like, I would say, kind of like you're treated in a way in selection. You know, you're not. Yeah, there is some stuff where um, I feel like maybe some guys are treated like shit. You know, I mean, it's well deserved. You know, they're um, yeah, but I think everything was kind of individual based. So um, your individual performance based, just like selection in a way, aspects of it. So if you have to do a ruck in a certain amount of time and you're not meeting that standard, like they would just boot you. And the pass rate was extremely high for my time frame, anyways. For guys that went through SOP-C and then went to selection, pass rate was very high. um, but also too, they did a lot to weed out the guys that would not make it. So PT wise, if you weren't meeting standards, if you couldn't land nav, um, if I mean basic soldering stuff, you know, if because I mean there were a lot of guys that their military experience was basic training, um, and airborne school. I mean, I was only like a half step ahead of them. You know, I'd done some stuff in the reserves and things, but you know, it's not like I'd been on active duty for years somewhere else or anything. But I think it was just kind of a maturity level in a way that there were guys that showed up that didn't have that, and whether they could perform physically or not, just basic soldiering stuff that I think that comes with some maturity. If they weren't doing that, then they were gone, or they'd be low crawling through the mud and in enough time to where they would quit. And you know, so either way, um, they were culling the class for just the guys that they thought would make it through. And I mean, it's challenging, but I didn't feel like I was hating life or anything like that. And in a ways, it's a lot like selection with more instruction. And but by the time I got to selection, I felt like I was set up for so much success. You know, land nav I was not worried about, PT I was not worried about, and really at that point, it becomes a game of like, uh, the sound oversimplifies it, but if you just don't quit and you're a good dude and you contribute to the team when you get into the team events, then you should be okay. Um, yeah,
Absolutely. There's a lot of theories and plans and workout, everything built around selection now. But if you know how to ruck and your feet are okay and
yeah,
you don't quit, you'll be 74% of the way to passing. If you just those two things are are secured. I'm not going to quit, and the ruck's not going to beat me down. You're probably going to be okay. Yeah,
yeah. I forgot about that. Super important, and probably overlooked is taking care of your feet, because if your feet get trashed, I mean, it doesn't matter how great of a guy you are, how in shape you are, um, and how determined you are. I mean, that can throw a wrench in things in itself.
yeah. I only recently realized why my feet got destroyed so badly at selection. The first time I'd only been in the army for what, like 8 months or something like that,
Oh
and then the
wow.
second time was 15 months, I think. Um, but I was on staff at battalion at a field artillery unit. Like we never did anything.
Yeah,
Like you never marched anywhere. Your feet didn't get used to your boots. So when I got to selection, I mean, I was in a lot of pain. And it was all self-inflicted because I wasn't ready. I was good at the physical event. My feet weren't army ready to go do
yeah,
that sort of thing and just get the shit kicked out of them. I didn't know any better. I was like, I just gotta, I don't want to be in that unit. So we're gonna go be a SF and
yeah,
freaking. I don't care if it hurts. Fuck that, and I'll be fine.
yeah. I think that was an advantage of SOP C is that, um, one way or another, you learned good foot care. And yeah, so by the time I went to selection, my feet were just, yeah, that's why I walked through so much water and everything. I didn't care, because my feet, um, I took real good care of them in general, but they were already calloused and built up and everything. And also, another thing that really helped me out was I went to get on the bus to go to Camp McCall, to go to Camp McCall for selection. And, I'm in line and everybody's getting on the bus, like they're saying their name or whatever. And um, they get on the bus and then they stop me and they're like, hey, your medical records are missing. And I'm like, okay, um, you know, what do I need to do or whatever? And they're like, no, you can't go to selection because we don't have your medical records. And somehow the Army lost my medical records, and I could not go to selection without any medical records. And it was going to take a while for the Army to regenerate medical records. And it just ended up being like a folder, with my name on it kind of thing. I'm sure there's like some paper in it, um, but it worked out good for me because I didn't go to that selection class, and um, I just became awaiting training. So I didn't have to go through SOP C over again, but I just did PT twice a day with one of the other SOP C cadre, and I mean it was, things are way smarter now in terms of programming and everything else, but this wasn't like just crush your soul PT. It was, especially for back then, well thought out in terms of programming and recovery and just smart training. And so I had a whole nother month um, to just do PT, and that was it. And then go to selection. So worked out really well for me.
Think as the war, I say war, global war on terror. Nobody knew how long it was going to last at that point, right? So in 2004, 5, that first wave of guys is starting to rotate and get on the SWIC levy and have to come to group. So the cadre that were at SWIC didn't want to fucking be there at that point in 2004, 2005. And SOPSI changed into as the X-ray program grew, cadre, I don't want to fucking be here. Who the fuck are you to come be a civilian and come do this job? I'm going to make this as hard as possible on these. That's just what I think from how I would view it if I was in
I could
that
see that.
era coming in, because the SOPSI cadre you had were already at SWIC when 9/11 happened. It's different. The X-ray program just starts up. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to gatekeep a little bit. They're not angry about not being in the fight with their team, being a horse soldier or, going in infilling or ripping out or these things or having friends die. So I think the thing morphed into fuck you for wanting to be a civilian and come do this job. I'm going to make this as hard as possible. From talking to people that have come on my show. I don't know what it is now. It doesn't sound like it's the same thing, but I think everything pendulum swings and it swings
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen in the videos where, and I've heard of guys where, seemed like they had to have, buzzed haircuts and stuff like that. And yeah, we definitely didn't have to do that.
Oh yeah, all the X-rays at selection, what was that in 12? They all had shaved heads.
Yeah.
I didn't know what an X-ray was. I was like, what's up with those guys? They look intense, and they were intense, but they were all
Yeah.
chill because they got some time off because SOPSI sucks.
Yeah.
Any point in selection where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to have this, or you're good to go.
I felt pretty good about selection. Um, there were honestly, I think there were some things, schools on a team afterwards that were, um, not more challenging, but I was worried about. Where selection, I can't remember being too worried about it. I think part of it was because I was so prepared. Um, um, yeah, the obstacle course, I felt like I just crushed it. I mean, there are a lot of things in selection that I felt like fit with my strengths. Um, being out in the woods and walking around, doing land nav and all that, and rucking. I grew up in the country, and so there were some people that got freaked out by just being by themselves in the woods and stuff, and that ended their time at selection. And being alone at night in the woods, and um and where it was just very, very comfortable for me. I felt, um yeah, a lot of my strengths I was using during selection. I wasn't as good at rucking as I would be later on. um by the time I got to a team, felt like I'd gotten pretty good at rucking. um But other than that, I seem to do well at, um, most everything that we had to do in selection. But I can think of one school where it was the opposite of that, where, um, not to get into too much detail of this, but, it was way outside of what I'd ever done, anything in my life. And you're in plain clothes, and I was totally the guy that, we're walking, I mean, downtown in a city, and I'd spent a whole lot of time in cities, just was not the environment that I grew up in. And walking around and, formal attire and stuff. And I was totally the guy that was like, it's raining, and I'm just like force walking through the rain in my like business casual, and they're like, hey bro, like, you know you're not in the woods with a ruck on, like, might want to like wear an umbrella, get an umbrella and like maybe get out of the rain and shit, like, so it was just, I mean, that was not, I mean, there's other aspects of that school that, just are not a part of my personality. Um, and it's just, it didn't play to my strengths. And I really, really struggled through, um, there were 2 courses like that. And I just, oh gosh. Um, yeah, that, that was, yeah, that was difficult.
But
Um,
you're already a group at that time, and
right. Yeah.
so I mean, whether it's two or three, it's like, it's not for everybody. Your career can go this way towards running and gunning, or it can go something that you never expected there to be in group because you don't know. And that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, you came to the army not knowing what you were getting into in the reserves, and then I want to go active, and now okay, I want to be RIP, and okay, fine, I'll take the selection. What are you thinking at this point going through the Q course? Do you even know what SF is? Because the common answer on this show is no. I had no idea. I just knew it had to be more professional and more army like than what I was in.
Yes. I knew before I left. I mean, you can never really know what you're getting yourself into. Um, but I had an idea of what SF was. And the idea that I had at the time, um, before I had signed my contract, was that SF trained a lot of guys, that there was an unconventional warfare piece. Um, they still have other mission sets to include direct action, but it's not their only mission set doing door kicking type stuff. So I had an awareness of that. Um, but yeah, I think I had as good of an idea as I could have had of what I was getting myself into without actually having been on a team already.
That's good. The most common answer is no. I didn't know what the fuck I was getting myself into.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know. Like I was like, yeah, that's I want to do that. Man, when I went to the Marine recruiter, they wouldn't take me. So I walked right next door, went to the Army. I said, "What's the hardest thing you guys got?" And he's like, "I don't know, Special Forces." I was like, "I'm gonna do that." Took a roundabout path to get there,
Yeah.
but I fucking got there and I figured it out. So,
Yeah.
and that maybe even that little decision of somebody telling me no, I was like, well, I'm gonna do something fucking harder than that. Maybe the
Yeah.
hardest thing I could figure out how to do. Maybe even that was what drove me to do it more than everything it became. Um, but it
Yeah.
was the right. It was the right decision. The, like better than staying where I was.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
you think at one point, like, the 82nd's the best unit in the Army, or Ranger Battalion's the best unit in the Army, or SF. But as long as you're happy where you get to, and you're always trying to be better, and you don't get comfortable, then that's the best Army or unit in the Army for you. Uh,
Yeah.
Oftentimes, though, it's not enough. It's never enough. You get there, and you're like, "Oh, I want more. What can I sacrifice? What can I cut out of my life to get more of this? I want to have more of this." Um, and or everything's going great and then it stops and you're like, what the fuck happened? Oh, I want that back. Where'd it go? Well, it's gone. Well, I didn't even take a picture. Fuck. Well, too late, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and almost like everyone that's come on here to the point where I believe it's not even possible. I'll ask, did you ever stop and take a look around and appreciate what you're doing? And everybody, no. I just was going, going, going. And I've come almost to the realization that it's not even possible to appreciate the awesome shit you're doing in the paths we all went while you're doing it, because it's never enough. You're striving to keep pushing forward, and there's not enough time in the day or wherewithal to notice how awesome the things we are doing are. And then it's over and you go, what
Yeah.
the fuck? What the fuck? I sacrificed my mental health or my physical health or my family, and now it's over. So it's interesting. interesting conundrum we get ourselves into.
Yeah, I would say in the Q course, I probably was not, um, I was probably just focused on just getting it done and not so much like what you're talking about, really being present in the moment and that, and really taking things in. I would say on a team, um, I think I was okay at that. Not like I am today. I feel like today I try to be very present in as many moments as I can. And I think part of that comes with time. Um, I think about, um, I mean, there's just some things will go away. And, now, um, when my son was little and he doesn't like to take naps and I didn't like to take naps, I still don't like to take naps. And so it's hard to get him to take naps. And the only way he would really go to sleep is if I would lay him on my chest and then he would fall asleep. And then I would do that thing where you like try and like escape, without waking him up. And, uh, I mean, recognizing, the I know there will come a time where it'll be the last time that I do that. And I mean, now he's 13. He wears the same size shoe as me, kind of thing. Um, he's like, he's a big kid. And like, I will never do that again where he'll fall asleep laying on my chest. And so it was becoming more into my awareness when I was I knew that I was going to be leaving active duty when um, it was probably like maybe a C-130 or something flying over, like we're on post or something, or I don't know. And one of my teammates, I'm like watching it, and he's like, "The hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "There'll be a moment where I don't get to see this regularly," and just trying to, as simple as it is, just totally take in a military aircraft that I've seen probably fly over who knows how many times. But the last time I saw a C-130 fly over, I don't even know. Um, and so, especially towards the end, trying to take in more of it, but also too, yeah, this is interesting. Is where it gets kind of conflicted. Is started to become jaded too, to where um, I know as a contractor, I probably took one or two pictures out of those deployments. And towards the end on active duty, I was only taking pictures that were, you know, um, intel related or something
SFZ.
operational. Yeah. And no longer like, oh man, this like mountain range over here looks awesome. Or this would be a really cool, like, picture with like some of my teammates or something. All of that had stopped, you know, deployments ago. and and so yeah, I wish I had more pictures. But um but yeah, there were probably things that I was getting frustrated with, or you know I mean, I imagine after a matter of time of doing something over and over like that, you just get to the point to where um I don't know. Um, yeah, I get frustrated with things, and yeah,
I think you hit the nail on the head with a throwaway comment you made there, when your buddy says, "What are you doing?" Because oftentimes, uh, at your unit, doesn't matter what unit, if somebody's like stopping to appreciate the wind blowing through the trees, they'll like walk up behind you and
oh yeah,
smack you up the head. Hey, dipshit, we got to get going.
yeah,
So not bring you back down to earth, but kind of shit on you for just taking a second to take it all in or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a very, I don't want to say demeaning, but like, I don't know, it's just a rough personality wise environment. Like, stop being a little bitch, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Can
And
be for sure.
yeah, but that's it. Like, everybody's dark humor. There's no humor like dark humor in the military, and stuff like that. And that's it bleeds over into when we get out. Um, the like this, you know, silent professional, quiet professional sort of thing, which that shit needs to end. Like
Yeah.
if you're not making any noise, nobody's gonna fucking hear you when you get out. And there's this hangover period when you get out of, oh, I need to continue that life. No, that life's over. You need to be um, loud and tell people what you did, and go on to the next business project, or you're not gonna be successful. You're just gonna be living in the past of accomplishments and not integrate into this new society that you have to integrate into. Otherwise, you're gonna be isolated and alone, like we said in the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
But that's generational, and it's the kind of comes along with the job of being quiet and silent. Uh, from talking to
Yeah.
people on here, that trickled down from Vietnam, right? People come home and they got spit on and shit thrown at them, so they just shut up, and that kind of morphed now into, oh, you gotta maintain this persona. Fuck that. Well, be
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I have a friend, one of my old teammates. He has a pretty large following, and he does. I'm not sure if he's doing much of it anymore, but at least at one point he was doing a lot of firearms related courses and things, and traveling around and doing that kind of deal. And there were guys giving him so much shit for saying that he was a Green Beret and all this stuff. And he's like, "Well, what do you want me to say? Like, how am I supposed to like offer that I have some kind of credibility and experience and kind of things? If like, what do you want me to say that I draw all this from? You know?" And yeah, it's crazy. I think, yeah, and I think for me, um, yeah, did the very much silent professional for a long time, and um, but ultimately, it comes back to something I said in the beginning, is that if there's something that I have of value and it can have a positive impact on someone else, then I have a responsibility to share it. And if that means it's my experience while in SF, or if it's, I don't know, something I've learned uh, transitioning out of the military, um, whatever it is. If I don't cook or anything, but if I know like this awesome cooking recipe or something, like, uh, whatever it is, if I have something of value, I should be sharing it with someone else, regardless of where that comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first got out and started being affiliated with Green Beret Foundation, Travis Wilson over there at Green Beret Foundation, he said, "Hey, that time for being quiet professional, that's fucking over, because this is, you got to be loud, you got to be boisterous and tell people what we did, because you're trying to get people to take the money out of their wallet and give to a benevolent organization or a foundation, and raise money for
Yeah,
people that won't speak up. That's your job now, is to speak up for everybody that won't do it and won't ask for help." So I I put it aside real quick and kind of embraced it. My vision of it has changed, or how I feel about it. If I'm going to use this, as a background, or the beret as a background, I better fulfill, be look like I'm worthy of it, right? Can carry myself in a professional manner. And I've done a better job over the years. Haven't done a good job, but doing much better now, and try and impress upon other people that they should do the same. There's nothing wrong with it. We had our background. the Army took everything they wanted from us. Well, I can use the tagline if I want to at least get a foot in the door somewhat. The rest is up to me. You know, Signing up for selection is one thing, and then the rest is up to you. You got to go and do the shit.
Yeah.
So this is just an introduction. The rest I got to be able to talk, and be genuine with people and not be a fucking douchebag. And some people are. Some people, that's their personality. And you know
Yeah.
what? Fuck them. If it works for them, good for them. That's not how I want to be portrayed. I want to do what I do. And if I choose to use that I'm a former Green Beret, then that's fine too. As long as I try not to be a bad example um, for anybody, because somebody that wants to go selection might listen to this, be like, I don't want to work with a guy like that, or I do want to work with a guy like that. And there are
Yeah.
people like me, and then not like me in group. And the show is, to see some of the pitfalls. There's positives to it, and there's negatives to it, and things like that. And hopefully, we can outline some of those in the show. You know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of information, a long show, but it's good information. And generally, everybody's got a different path, but we're all the same and very different at the same time. So I don't know. I enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That's good advice that Travis gave you. I wish somebody would have given me that advice years ago. And um, yeah, because I held on to that silent professional, not quiet, but silent professional for too long.
It's too bad, and it's something to be really proud of. Another thing I think of why it is that we diminish our accomplishments is because in group everybody's a Green Beret. It's not special. You're not special at all.
Yeah.
You know, you everybody's got the beret, everybody's got the tab, and there's a good chance that everybody there is more badass than you are, at least in your mind. That's what you think. If you're humble,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's, I walk the hall with actual heroes, right? So when you leave, you carry some of that mentality with you that, oh, I'm just a Green Beret, or I'm just this guy, and that'll drag out as you continue in your civilian world, and to the point where you think that's true. Not that you're not better than anybody else when you get out, but
Sure.
you accomplished a lot of cool shit. Other people might want to hear about it. There are people that look up to you that you've never met, you know? There's people that follow my stuff. That was a big realization for me, that of people that look up to me that I don't even know. Well, I don't owe them anything, but I feel like I have a responsibility to at least be a better version of myself for somebody that's thinking about joining or thinking about doing something in fitness or speaking or starting their own project. Yeah, I could. Um, so, but a lot of these programs for transition are starting to pop up.
Yeah.
The different foundations have things that are going to group and helping guys. Hey, this is what you need to do to get out. These are the people you need to know. You need to avoid these missteps. We need to identify operator syndrome, right? Because everybody doesn't have it. Um, but a lot of guys do, or they'll have some of those symptoms, and
Yeah.
you need to take care of some of those things as you're getting out. Take your VA appointments seriously instead of being so angry like I was. Like, I don't want to fucking do this. Well, no, you got to do it. If somebody was telling me that, um, maybe things would be differently, or would have turned out differently. But I like where I'm at now, at least
Yeah.
mentally and physically wise.
Yeah.
And I
Same.
get to doing this project is so much fun, and it's given me different perspective on the other guys and what everybody goes through, and then hopefully it'll show other people that, well, I'm going through that shit too, right? And maybe somebody will reach out and avoid some of the shittier parts of transition that happen to a lot of the guys when they don't feel like they have somebody to reach out to. Maybe they'll reach out to me or you.
Yeah.
But you graduated, right? Got your beret, got your tab, and third group's there at Fort Bragg. So just going down the street, what are you thinking at this point? Because you're riding high, and a long process from going from reserves, now coming back and going through the whole Q course. Have you ever been at a unit at this point?
Just my reserve unit.
And
That's
that
it.
was just once in a while.
Uh-huh.
So now it's time to Army
Yeah.
for the first time, really. What's this like going to a team room?
Um, looking back on it, I probably should have been worried or nervous about it, maybe. But you know, it's kind of. I think probably the feeling I had is it's if you've been wanting to do something for so long, and then it's like, okay, now you finally can do it. Maybe that's where I was at. And and what I mean by wanting to do something, even before 9/11, there was something, it goes back to this like same drill sergeant, from my first time in basic training talking about combat. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. Um, and so at this point, because I mean, teams were deploying and now Iraq is going on. Um, there's a seriousness to everything. I felt like, and like where I felt like I had that internally, but now I'm in a place where I'm at least in a place, training wise, going through the Q course and of course at group. It's way more serious, but um, it's yeah, everything is taken so serious because training wise on a team, if what you do or don't do, I mean, just in general, it can have an impact on someone else's life, and that you're going to be deploying um, at some point, and it's not going to be a long time before you go. And so this was kind of an interesting situation for me because I finished the Q course, got married, and um, my wife, I told her she was living in Texas at the time, and I told her that I was like, hey, you can um, come back up to Bragg, but when I sign into group, I could be deploying right away. I don't know, but there's a good chance that I could be meeting a team downrange, or I could be deploying within a couple months. Like the likelihood of that was extremely high, and so looking back on it, such a strange life. Uh, how everything is so centered around combat, and it has to be, and it should be, because it very much is life and death situations. And so, but my wife was like, yeah, I'll, even if you get deployed right away, I'll, that's still just a little bit more time that I have with you. And she's like, I don't care if I don't know the area too well or don't know anybody, that kind of thing. And so she came back up with me to Bragg, and I signed into group and met with the battalion sergeant major first. And uh, you know, I mean, there's so many stories within just these first like few days being at group, but I'll just give the overview. So this battalion sergeant major, he's walking me down to the company, and he's like, "Hey, you're going to Alpha Company, and um, he's like, all these teams have just gotten back from a deployment not too long ago. There's one team that's getting ready to deploy. He's like, this is the best team that we have in the battalion, but you're not going to that team." So I was like, okay. And so meet with the company sergeant major, and he's like, the company sergeant major is like, hey, we've got a team that's getting ready to deploy in about a week and a half, and they don't have any 18 Charlies, so I'm going to put you on that team. And he's like, it's the battalion's direct action team. And he's like, we've got a lot of really senior guys and experienced guys on that team. And I was like, okay. And so at the time, the whole team was at Griffin Group, doing the whole driving course. And I'm like the only guy that's on the team, so I'm hanging out with the B team. And um, there were some things that the team still needed to purchase for this deployment. And somehow I got tasked with this, and I can remember the supply sergeant who's actually E4, wasn't even NCO, so supply guy for the company. I'm going around with him in town, and with a government purchase card or whatever, buying stuff for this deployment, and I felt like I had no idea what the hell I was doing, because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Like I feel like the Q course really is kind of basic training for SF in a way. There's like, I feel like, at least for me, uh, I learned a lot in the Q course, but it felt like I didn't know shit when I got to a team. And there was just so much that I had to learn. But I can remember the supply guy, he's like, hey, which one of these do you think the team wants? And I'm like, dude, I have no idea. Like, you know, uh, I'm brand new. Like, I have no idea. And so just making the best guess at some of these things that we're purchasing, it's like tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff for the team, and kind of hoping you don't fuck that up right out the gate. And, you haven't even met the team and you're making some really big decisions on stuff, I felt like. But my experience when the team got back was way different than what I hear from a lot of guys and what I saw from a lot of brand new guys. The team was, um, there's some guys on the B team that didn't like me. Maybe one guy on the B team that didn't like me um, before the team got back, um, which is a whole other story. But the team they were appreciative that I was there. And and maybe it was more of like, they have no 18 Charlie. And it's like, hey, we need somebody. And so they were thankful that I was, that spot was being filled. And um, this deployment that is now within a few days, that there's somebody to fill that position. And uh, it ended up being just the best, for me, the best way to go to a team, and the best team that I felt like I could have gone to in terms of, again, what was a good fit for me, because um, there was a lot of shooting and that we would do on this team. And just during this deployment, like when we first deployed, it was in the middle of um, like Ramadan. So everybody is on reverse sleep cycle, like the partner force that we were working with. And I mean, and the whole city was on reverse sleep cycle. And so, um, because, as a part of the culture during Ramadan, they're not eating or drinking or partying or working, not even working. But at night, you can do some of this stuff because God can't see it at night, according to the culture. And so, um, yeah, everybody, partner force is not, and the whole city is just shut down during the day, and then in the afternoon, everybody starts, maybe it's maybe this was after Ramadan, but either way, at a certain point, everybody starts chewing cot, and um, I forget what type of. I mean, it's a Schedule One substance here, but I forget the. Um, it's not an opioid, I don't think, but either way, it's has some kind of psychoactive effects, and so yeah, your partner forces sleeping the whole day and then high the rest of the night, kind of thing, and along with the rest of the city. So we just focused on doing as much team training as possible early on, and um, everybody on my team had either been through an operator training course at some point in their career, or um, had um, been through Sephardic, and so and these are very much like shooting CQB type schools, um, and again, it just ended up being such a great fit because um, growing up in the country, I just did a lot of like hunting and shooting and stuff as a kid, and so these were, and to some degree, skills that had already developed, and um, and although I was not nearly as fast as a lot of the other guys. Um, and I didn't have the speed in terms, and I was learning a lot of weapons manipulation stuff in terms of transitions, mag reloads, and those kinds of things. That was all relatively new to me, and so I didn't have any kind of speed with a lot of that. But in terms of accuracy, even my team sergeant said that he's like, man, like he can shoot just as good as just about anybody else on the team. And so, and I say that because, um, not because like I'm so awesome, but because to like um, show how much of a good fit it was for me, and because it was such a good fit, it made for such an easy way to come onto the team because not only did I feel like I was needed, but they also saw that I could provide some value. Um, and you're in a deployment situation, so there's an opportunity to, in some ways, kind of prove yourself, and early on, versus like I saw some guys that came to the team after me, and like the worst is when the team has just gotten back from a deployment and you're a brand new guy and you have to wait 6 months before the next deployment. And those guys got so much shit. And, um, but I think there's a reason behind all of that. But it was a great introduction into going to a team for me. And so Um, I do a lot of talking now, it feels like, but that's not normal for my personality. Like I'm a very quiet person. And so for me to just show up and, keep my mouth shut and just try and take in as much as I can and provide as much value as I can. Um, and really, I think there's only a couple things you can do outside of that. Be in the best shape you can be in, and know your job as best as you can, and contribute as much as you can. Um, and so that's what I was doing. And um, so interesting thing about SF is that even towards the end of this deployment, maybe it was midway through or something, I don't know. Uh, because nobody's telling you like great job, or they're only really telling you if you've like fucked something up, and at this point I don't know that, and so but nobody's telling me like good or bad one way or another really, and I feel like I'm failing at things doing like team training because, and I just don't know. I'm learning, and I think that's another skill that I have. I have a love for learning, and um, I think this is SF guys in general. They're trainable. I think it's a part of the selection process. So you have to be trainable, and so they taught me a ton in a short period of time. And at a certain point, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm like doing good or not because nobody's really saying anything to me. And in terms of like, hey man, like great job doing this, and it's not that I need that, but I want to know where I'm at, like if I need to improve on something or not. And, but outside of that, um, man, it was the best way to come to a team. And the guys that I was surrounded by were just some of the best teammates that you could have, and so much experience, um, so much knowledge. And I was really young, man. I was 22 at the time, and I don't know if I know I was the youngest guy in the company at the time, and I know there's one other guy younger than me in the battalion. But I think everybody on the team, most everybody was in their 30s or in their 40s, and just tons and tons of team time. And uh, man, what a way to come into SF, I feel like, is that I learned a tremendous amount from them. And yeah, that was the best.
No. Yeah, that's got to be something having a 10-year plus discrepancy from the youngest guy to the next youngest guy on the
Yeah.
team. It's like it's a little kid, but yeah, I can see that though. If you're the only Charlie showing up, the team's got to be like, "Oh fuck," Yeah, come on, man. All right, we'll get you up to speed
Yeah.
because you're all we got, right?
Yeah.
We gotta get you up to speed because we're going to combat, and everybody's got a different story of how they showed up. I mean, I showed up. I went to a bad team, disjointed, and that was proven a couple months later when I got hurt. So
Mm.
everybody's got a story of their getting a group, and I'm glad it worked out for you. What was what was your view? So you kind of knew what you're getting into, and you knew what SF was. Was deploying along the lines of what you thought? Did it fulfill what you thought SF was, or was it something different? Deploying to combat, I mean.
Yeah, at times for sure, and then at times no. Um, um, I think about that first deployment. I'm like, uh, this is gonna sound real cheesy, but I think there's an aspect that you think it's gonna be cool, you know. And that first deployment, I'm like, holy shit, man, this is fucking cool. And uh, wearing a lot of plain clothes most of the time. Um, Not wearing uniform a whole lot. Um, I mean, just some things were just very, um, um, you would never see in a conventional unit. And I'm like, and this is one thing that I like about SF is that it's like, there's a, it sounds odd to say this about the Army, but there's a lot of freedom in it, in a way. And I really love that aspect. And granted, like you'll have a lot of freedom, but if it's that saying where it's enough rope to hang yourself, like you'll be given a lot of freedom, but if you fuck that up, then shit's really going to come down on you. And the thing that, so I'd say that deployment, I was like, yeah, I would say it was, in some ways, I couldn't know what to expect, but I was like, okay, this is what SF does, and this is awesome. My next deployment, the first part of that trip was in a way similar, where I was like, this is what I expect of SF. The second half was the opposite. So the first half of that next trip, um, we were on a fire base with some infantry guys, um, and they had access to a lot of air assets, and um, the agency was co-located with us, and they had amazing intel and all of their assets that they brought. And so, man, there was a lot of that trip, where that first part of the trip, where we would be sitting on the airfield, um, with all of our stuff ready to go. Like, the birds are running, and we're just waiting for this intel from the agency to get whatever grid, and then we'd run on the birds and then go hit this target. Um, and just doing a lot of that. And I'm like, and and we, there's a part of that that I think could easily be left out, because it makes it seem like this is a unilateral type mission. We had a partner force that we trained that was amazing, and those guys at a certain point really would do just about anything for you, and a lot of times they did. Um, they would sacrifice themselves or put themselves at greater risk for you, and I think that was a part of the work that we did in terms of building a relationship, investing in them and training them, and truly being there to help their area, their country, and their village. And um, and that was great. And running all these missions like that. and and then the second half of the trip didn't have a single air asset, and uh, was, yeah, n- nowhere. Um, a lot of what we were doing was not geared towards kinetic operations, and so it was just. I mean, I still found ways to. I felt like do what I thought. I mean, there's still some amazing experiences that came out of that second trip, but it was just not what I expected, I guess. Um, and and I would say that would be true throughout the rest of my deployments. There were parts where I was like, "This is what I expected," and then there are parts that it wasn't.
But you had said much earlier, you started to notice that you were getting jaded. When did that
Yeah,
happen on these deployments? Where is this? Is this your second to last or your last?
this would have probably started on my third deployment. Things got real weird around that time, and
In group or on the team?
in group. Well, I would say just in Afghanistan as a whole, things started to get kind of weird. Part of it was, the powers that be were starting to say, "Hey, we've been at war for this long, so therefore we should be in this phase of the war," meaning that we shouldn't be doing so many, um, you know, door kicking type missions. The partner force should be taking lead on more of this stuff, and they should be doing unilateral missions. In other words, we should be stepping back further in an advising role. And also there's a lot of rules of engagement that were tightened down, and I agree. We should have been at that point. but we weren't. And but they were wanting us to fight like that was the case, that we were further in the war, like the war had progressed further than what it had. And I had a man, I'm so thankful for specifically my team leader at that time. He just I thought I was going to get kicked out of the army, by the end of that deployment. And because he just wasn't having any of that shit. And knowing that some of this was putting guys' lives at risk. And uh, this guy, maybe he wasn't thinking about his career. Either way, he wasn't acting like he was. And he did a lot of things to challenge leadership, even to the point of fist fighting field grade officers. And, because what they were telling us to do, telling the team to do, was going to cost somebody's life. And I mean, when I say it out loud, that makes sense, but I think some people can get so wrapped up in their careers and political stuff and, um, well, just, Roger, we'll go do that, and not really take into account how this can affect someone's life, um, and not challenge, um, the leadership. But I'm thankful that he made a full career, um, you know, beyond SF, and full career as an officer in the Army, and like really successful career. But I'm so thankful for him because, um, yeah, he pushed back on so much stuff that I felt needed to be pushed back on, and it may have hurt his career some, but so there was that part of it. And then, um, yeah, and then maybe 2 deployments later, after that one, these things continue to get clamped down more and more. And so what you end up doing is, I think you mentioned something with this earlier, and I think this is true in life, is that you find a way. If someone tells you no, or if there's some kind of obstacle, if you want to do something bad enough, you're going to find a way to make it work. And when, um, you're feeling like your hands are tied, and, um, and I'm trying to think how to put this without like, um, yeah, there became more restrictions, which required more paperwork to do the same type of missions that you did before. And so, um, and this is what it took to do some of those missions. Like I can remember, and this is on my last deployment on active duty, is putting together a 40-page PowerPoint on, basically painting a picture of all the intel that we had and all these different targets, which, yeah, it took a whole lot of work to be able to put some of this stuff together. And it is definitely not something super sexy when you think about SF as creating a 40-page PowerPoint.
Come
And,
on.
but, me and my team leader went back to, a main base to brief a lot of the leadership, as well as, some other soft units, and said, hey, this is the intel picture we have. Some of these targets may pop like tomorrow, that we need to action, or another one maybe like 2 weeks from now. And essentially, we just were, by doing all of this work, we essentially opened up a huge window of time for us on all these different targets. And as the intel shifted, because one day it may be that we need to action this target because of something new that came in, and it's time, most everything is time sensitive, and you can't just plan like, hey, bad guy, we need you to be at this place, like 3 weeks from now, and hope that you're there. And uh, you just can't. If that works out and you hit that target, from planning from 3 weeks ago, and part of that has to be a lot of luck. Um, Most everything is time sensitive to truly be effective, and so we did all this extra admin work to be able to open up this window to be able to have an array of targets that we could action in a similar way that we had done in the past, where we could go on a very time sensitive piece of information and be successful. Um, and so things were getting kind of weird like that, and um, and so that was my last deployment on active duty, and then the my team did the deployment they did afterwards. It sounded like they continue to follow a similar type of model of, hey, if we're going to be doing a lot of direct action stuff and time sensitive stuff, then what do we have to do to be able to do that in terms of creating intel targeting packages or whatever, and we're able to make it work even as things continue to get stricter and stricter. So um, so yeah, things were getting different, and now I've talked so much I forget what the original question was. Oh, how I got jaded. Um,
Yeah, I think we've gone through because things change, right? And your just perspective on what you are doing versus the effect that it's having might be changing as well. And as I said earlier, nobody knew it was going to go on this long. Well, maybe somebody did. Maybe the people that were really making money off of this thing knew. They're like,
Maybe.
because they had the contracts to fulfill the equipment and the weapons and the vehicles and all this shit. So they might have known because the government was paying them just hand over fist for us to drop equipment into these countries and then fucking leave it there. But
Yeah.
yeah, you become jaded. Everything changes, right? And I mean, 5 combat deployments to pretty much the same place is, and having your kind of being restricted, you're going to draw a different opinion on things than if you're going all kinds of different places all over the place, because our our job is to go do JSETs and train partner forces and teach all over the world. And combat takes its toll on you. That's a different kind of way. So I can understand that you would, things are going to change. You're going to feel differently. And especially with, you're losing friends, maybe not directly, but indirectly across the battalion or companies and things like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, opinions are going to change. Is that what kind of, what, how heavy was the decision to get out?
Mm, I didn't want to get out. I didn't want to leave the team. Um, but this is a whole interesting thing in itself. Is that um, at a certain point, um, they would ask who wants to go to SWIC out of the company. Like, hey, we need an 18 Charlie or a Bravo to go to SWIC or something like that. And sometimes guys would, maybe they needed a break or whatever, family situation, to where they can be at home or whatever. Guys would take those up. But then it got to a point to where um, they're like, hey, we need to send somebody from the company from SWIC, and you have the most time in the company right now. And this is, like, I took a very immature approach to it. But I mean, this is a natural progression of things. Like, you spend enough time on a team, like, you're gonna go to SWIC, you're gonna go back to the schoolhouse or wherever, and I get it. It makes sense. Like, if you are gonna be training guys who are wanting to become Green Berets, then it makes sense to take guys who have, very relevant information, guys who've just come back from deployments and teams who have just been doing the job, and they can tell you the latest stuff that's going on a team and downrange and all that. Like, that makes sense. You want that. But in my mind, it was, I want to do what I want to do, not what is, best for somebody coming through the Q course or whatever. And so, um, I said I didn't want to do that. And then I'm overseas on another trip. And the rest of my team is stateside. And I get a notification from my team sergeant he's like, hey, man, when you get back, you're going to go to SWIC. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And he's like, well, the only thing you can do is go to another company or go to SWIC. And I was like, I just want to stay on the team. I don't want to do either one of those. I just want to stay on the team. And I'm like, man, this is like really messed up to be getting this call while I'm overseas right now. And I can't really necessarily interface with like the company sergeant major or anything like that. And I'm kind of limited on what I can do about this. And so when I get back, they're able to find somebody else to fill that slot for SWIC. And so I'm able to stay on the team longer. And then, but this keeps resurfacing to the point to where, I get orders to go to SWIC. And my company sergeant major is like, he's like, hey man, like, this is it now. Like you have to go to SWIC. Like it's over with. And he's like, the only thing you can do about this now is sign a deck statement. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. So it's declining orders, but it also bars you from promotion. It bars you from reenlistment and all these things. Like it's it. You are just going to get out of the Army and that's it. And so I told him, I was like, okay, well, I'll sign a deck statement. And I think he was shocked that I said that. And he's like, I mean, but that's how serious I was about staying on the team for as long as I could. And he's like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to do that. And I'm like, okay, just I'll sign it, whatever. And kind of things go along, and I don't hear much more about it. And I go to the company sergeant major. I'm like, hey, it's getting closer to this deployment. Like, I haven't signed anything. Am I still going to be able to go on this next deployment? And um, and at one point he told me, he's like, look, man, like if you don't hear anything more about this, then I wouldn't ask. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I guess I'm going on this next deployment. And I didn't have enough time to even in the Army to finish out that deployment. I had enough time to maybe do, I think, 2 months of that deployment, of a 9-month deployment. And, and so, and at the time they were doing this weird thing where you couldn't extend. They were starting to restrict that. Like you could extend your contract like one time or something, and then that was it. And so I get downrange, and I shouldn't even have been there because I had so little time in the Army. And my company sergeant major starts working out some deal with the battalion sergeant major to where I was able to extend another couple months. And so I still don't have enough time to finish out this deployment or anything. And then I do this maybe another time or two, and the last time, like, group is not having it. And so either might have been my company or battalion sergeant major, I forget who, takes over this paperwork to extend me beyond the deployment so I can at least come home and I have a little bit of time to start out processing. He goes to, it was like some 101st guys, retention guys that were, um, on this big base. Um, and what I imagine is him walking in with this paperwork, and it's like some E4 or E5 and the 101st retention guys, and here's this SF Sergeant Major who walks in, who's like, "Hey, I need you guys to sign this paperwork or whatever, so we can get this guy extended or something." And they're like, "Oh, okay," and they just processed the paperwork and allowed me to finish the deployment and come home with a little bit of time to start out processing, and so I could transition. And but at that point it was kind of it, like I kind of went down this path of like I have to get out now because I'm going to be signing this deck statement. And then to where, you know uh, like with the idea of knowing that I'm getting out, it's like starting to make plans of like what I'm going to do next. Um and so, man, um and so when I got back, um I was still going to the team room every day, doing PT with the team in the morning, and then I go do my out processing stuff. And then um maybe I would come back in the afternoon and work out again or something. But that was kind of that was my days until I got out, which was like maybe another 2 months later or something, give or take. And um, and so I was in the team room some, but not very much. And I was there every day, but not for the full day. And um, yeah, even the group sergeant major came down and came into the team room, and this was like right. I mean, I was probably signing out of the army within a week at this point, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was like, "Well, I'm getting out," and he's like, asking me questions and everything, and he's like, "Man, somebody really must have pissed you off or something," which was not the case. You know, uh, it's just I was kind of being immature about it and like just thinking I could stay on a team forever or something, and without having to rotate to SWIC or somewhere else. And um, but he was asking me about my E7, um, and which at this point I knew this was coming. Is signing out the day that I signed out, I would go back to being an E6 because I I never went to, then it was called ANOC. It's now like ALC or SLC. I forget which one now.
Senior leader course. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Um, and I never went. Um, I was slotted to go a couple times, but never went. But had I gone to that, then I would have been able to keep my E7. Or if I'd have stayed in for another couple months, I would have been able to keep my E7 because then I would have met some kind of time standard or something. But the group sergeant major, he's like, "Hey, just stay in for another couple months, and you'll at least be able to keep your E7." And I'm just like, man, there were all these drug deals to keep me in, like extend me as much as I've already done. I think I've like maxed that out. But it was too late already. I mean, I already had another job lined up and had gone through some of the process for that contracting job already. And um, but what happened before that, and this is what have kept me in, is um, somebody came down from maybe battalion or group, when I happened to not be in the team room, like I was out doing my out processing stuff, and they're like, "Hey, you know, um, we need," talking about me, they're saying, "We need you and another guy from another company actually to deploy to it was a country in Africa, and it's kind of a very unique mission with just two guys going, and I was slotted to go do that, and I wasn't there when whoever this was came down, saying, "Hey, you're going on this deployment," kind of thing. My teammates were like, "Oh no, he's out processing. Don't worry." And it was like a week later when I found out about it, and they're like, "Yeah, like you almost went on this other deployment to wherever in Africa," and I'm like, "Oh man, I would have loved to have done that," you know, and but and had I been there, I would have found a way to get on that trip, and that would have potentially given me more time too on a team or something. I mean, but at the end of the day, it was coming. I was going to go to SWIC at some
Yeah.
point, and um, but yeah, I ended up um, kind of a really weird situation getting out, and and the last thing I'll say about my E7 is that part of the out processing requirements is that you have to see a SF National Guard recruiter. Just a part of the process, whether you want to go into SF National Guard or not. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go into this with an open mind, and maybe this is something I want to do, like keep my foot in the door, kind of thing. And I meet with this SF National Guard recruiter, and you know, they give me the whole spiel about it, and I was like, okay, um, if I do this, can I keep my E7? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, fuck you. I'm out. I'm not. And I have a friend who was in the exact same situation as me. And it took him years. He went E7 on active duty down to E6 the day that he signed out, was in SF National Guard for years as an E6 before he got his E7 back. And uh, that was it for me. Like, if I'm gonna have to go through that whole process, then um, you lost the only selling point. So
Yeah. Interesting. Different paths. That's yeah. The regulations in the military for that shit is crazy. In the time, I uh, I got one over on the military because I made the promotion list and then got medically retired like the next week.
wow,
So I was the first E7 in my year group to get promoted because if you're promotable and you get medically retired, they give you the next rank. So I didn't have to
wow,
do anything. So that's like my backdoor cheating. So I got my retired ID card says E7, but I
that's
was
awesome, man.
never. I was an E7 for 24 hours. I made promotion the one day, and then medical like the promotion paperwork for the 17th, and my retirement paperwork was the 18th. So I never actually.
Amazing.
It's on my dress uniform now, which I'll be wearing in 3 weeks when I speak at Memorial Day. But so looking back, do you think that was the most, I think you used the word immature or mature decision on how you chose to avoid SWIC? Or did you make the right choice?
I made the right choice. Um, it was where I was supposed to go in life, but it wasn't the most mature response to it, I think. And but yeah, everything worked out exactly the way it was supposed to, I feel like. And um, I will say that it's interesting, you know, hearing about your um, retirement for the military and the E7 piece. Um, what also is interesting about um, me joining and leaving active duty is that I got a bonus in the reserves to be a mechanic. And so to go active duty, because I was no longer going to be a mechanic, because I
You
was
had to
going to be
give
a
the
Green
bonus
Beret,
back.
I had to pay the bonus back to go active duty. And then leaving, I had to pay back all of my E7 pay to get out of the Army. So, uh,
You
so
gotta
that
be
they got
kidding
me on
me.
the way in and on the way out, man.
Oh man. Um that's hard to believe. Oh, you gotta give us that shit back. That's fucked up.
Yeah. But I will say this is that, um, there's a lot of pluses and minuses in life in general. Um, I am, and even with every bit of, if you want to call them negative or less than ideal experiences, man, I am extremely grateful for that time, and I wouldn't trade it at all. Um, and I believe this to be true is that even when I left active duty, and I feel like it was a short period of time, that I got lifetimes worth of experiences in just that short amount of time. And um, it's been so valuable to me, going forward in life, and uh, super thankful that that's been a part of my life. Um, as a whole, I'm a better person because of it. Um, and I think everything that I do it now is impacted by things that I learned during that time, or some of the experiences that I had. And um, yeah, extremely thankful for that time, and um, being able to serve in the capacity that I did, and in the time frame that I did, and and with third group. Um, yeah, I can't say anything more that can underscore how thankful I am for it.
I wouldn't change anything, even the way what happened to me getting hurt, because it did, invaluable. The Q course and group and everything I learned and the people I met and everything, all the opportunities that it's brought up for me. Whether I am making the best of them, well, that's yet to be seen. I'm trying my best now. Maybe I haven't in the past, but I'm doing my best um, to at least make the most of it and be happy. It sounds like you
Yeah,
are too. When
yeah.
did when did KLENR come along? When did you start? How far after you stopped contracting did you start that?
In 21, yeah, it was in the fall of 21, and it looks nothing like what it looks like today, where I was printing labels out of my home printer and then trying to put them on a box, and um, yeah, didn't even really have a logo or anything. And um, but that was kind of it. It did not look professional. It looked okay, um, but I think it was really good to test at that time with what I had, and see if this was something that are people interested in a product like this. And um, and without making a huge investment into something, start to learn a little bit, and understand the customer some more and what people want. And then at that point, it was probably maybe 6 months later or a little more, started to really professionalize things, and then really build, um, set the foundation for the company in terms of branding and scaling, and um, getting all of these processes in place. And um, yeah, and so that was in 22, was what KLENR looks like today for the most part.
Awesome, man. Fucking and to start, have your own thing. I know how, even this little bit that I've got going for the last 5 months or whatever, it's just so fun to see it change and have fun at what you're doing. I just got to figure out a way to make money. Uh, but that'll come along with it too. And just
Yeah.
keep working hard at it and put out a good product that makes people, that they want to get. So obviously everybody needs soap, and the market is out there. I just got back from North Carolina at Mountain Readiness Expo, and natural products and homesteading and prepping things. And these aren't crazy people. These are people that just want to have, be prepared or have natural products or,
Yeah.
a better way of doing things. And it's out there. And there's a lot more people than you think that want these things, but maybe they just don't know where to look, or what they don't have all the information, right? They're hearing things and don't know if something's true. So,
Yeah.
getting yourself out there and doing, a few hundred people will see this episode, and right, and then maybe somebody will want to change their way of thinking. But you got to get yourself out there and have a product that people want to, and then stand behind it. So I think it's fucking great, man. Proud of you.
Thank you, man. And yeah, I love what you're doing too. And um, I think there's very few things. Maybe there's more of these things that are out there, but I just haven't experienced them or directly know someone who really has. But I think it's rare to start whatever kind of project or business and then truly be able to monetize that early on. I think it takes a long time
Oh, yeah.
to to be able to build that up to where, okay, now I'm actually making a few bucks off of this, um, and uh, I think if that's the only goal, it probably will. It's probably bound to fail. Um, you know, and it sounds so cliche to say this, but if you can't enjoy the process along the way and put the effort into it, and honestly, I think entrepreneurship is it's one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. I think it's infinitely easier than selection or the Q course or anything like that. And I think it's because, that those things are challenging, but it's the roadmap is there for those kinds of things. Like if you want to be on an SF team, you know that um, you have to go to basic training and you have to go to airborne school and go to selection, and and I'm sure you can look up like what the different phases are of the Q course right now and the things that you need to know. And especially now there's so much information out there, you can educate yourself so much beforehand. And so, but like the things that you have to do in order to accomplish, getting to a team. Whereas with entrepreneurship, uh, you may have an idea of what the end goal is, but it's like, man, how do I get there? And what do I do when I'm doing what I think is the best, but I'm getting told no a whole lot, or the things that the approach that I'm taking is not working, and um, there's just so many unknowns along the way, and there is no roadmap, and um, and I think there's a ton of different paths to get to the same destination, and so it can be, yeah, I think that can be so much harder, and there's nobody there. You're alone in it, you know, and
You are, but from my short little time from January to now, I thought more people were going to tell me to go fuck myself.
yeah,
And everybody that I've been able to establish contact with has been very helpful, whether that be with coming on, recording an episode, giving me advice. I have advisors that run big podcasts that are telling me what to do
that's
behind the
awesome, man.
scenes. And SF guys, non-SF guys, just or the one I work with, he was recommended by an SF guy. They're great friends, and he runs a big show, and he has me come on his show as a regular guest now, and I get more practice that way. So yes, there won't be, and I forget the TM 7-8 maybe,
Yeah.
but that might not be there. But everybody's on social media now and in the community, and somebody's doing what you're doing or is further along or behind. And if you can build that network back up that we had in group, where the guys will say, oh, they'll just start giving you help. If you can build that network up and put in the time in that, you can have it again. I'm having it again now, and it's great, of having the people in my phone and team guys, other agency or other branches of the military. And if I have a question, somebody reach out to me. So technology is way beyond where I was in and much farther beyond when you were in. And now we got to take advantage of it to
Yeah.
do what we need to do. I'm making a game out of it. Like, I'm chasing followers on Instagram, and I'm seeing for every uh, group of followers, I'm getting this many on YouTube, and that's where the monetization comes. So I just need to chase this to get to rise these things, and I'm going after the portion that's easy for me, and I'm having fun with it. Like, I'm so much fun, and I get to meet and talk to so many cool people. Like, on a team room, you only get 11 other people, which is great, but you don't even know the other fucking teams at all. Now I got
Right.
to know everybody, just like when I was on the B team or battalion, and that was a lot of fun when I knew everybody.
Yeah, I think what you said a second ago is a recipe for success, is that there are way more people that are willing to help than you would expect. And it took me a long time to learn that. Even there's a guy in my industry who um, has an extremely successful brand and now has two businesses. And I'm like, man, this dude is never, and he started out like me, where super tiny, small, and um, built it to this huge thing. And um, yeah, and I'm like, this dude's never gonna wanna, you know, because I just needed some advice from somebody who's been there. That would be ideal, and who's already gone down this road and knows what worked for them and didn't, and um, instead of me making all the mistakes, which I've done that too, in business, I've made, oh man, so many mistakes. Like, I've learned more the hard way than I have just the easy way. But yeah, this dude was like a very high level guy and doesn't really know much about me. And yeah, he's like, this is what you need to do right now. Here's like, he gave me a ton of different things that he did at my level. And he's like, I did this, this, and that. And he's like, I can even send you a copy of some of the pricing sheets and stuff that I used back then to present to people and all that. And I'm like, I was like, okay, this is like a one-off call that I'm having with this guy, and that'll be it. And he's sending me emails following up, like, checking in kind of thing. And he's like, hey, if you ever have any other questions, always hit me up kind of thing. And I was like, man, I can't believe it. But yeah, it's kind of what I said earlier, where my personality is more of just, I'll put my ruck on and I'll walk in the rain and just walk through the draw and just put my head down and go. Whereas other aspects where it's networking isn't like, it's not like a huge skill set of mine. And so it's so much slower in terms of building that network. And also too, just um, asking for help for people who've been there who can help. And uh, I think in that aspect, you're like light years ahead of where I was like a few months into doing things.
I just like the Q course. I'm trying to find the lazy way to do things. So it's I don't know, it's fun. I'm having a good time, and I got to figure a couple things out, but we're all making it together. And like, the first dude I talked to, Denny over at Security Hall podcast,
Uh-huh.
he was said the most encouraging thing, and I went, I'm in the right place. You know, that was probably the nicest thing that somebody that doesn't know me could ever say to me. And I was like, this is who I want to associate with. And
Yeah.
Joe Rogan said the other day, anyone that's a hater is a fucking loser across the board, and that's
Mm.
whether you're an asshole or you talk down to people or you don't encourage people and things like that. You're a fucking loser. Doesn't matter if you how successful you are. There's something going on there that you need to work on in yourself. Help people out, lift people up, make them feel good about themselves. And if they're going down the wrong path, steer them in the right direction. That's only going to help you in the long run, because they're going to be like, that person helped me out when I was going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Now, you might not always listen to them because we don't do things unless we have to or want to, but maybe you'll come around. Maybe you'll see the light, um, and turn things around. So,
Yeah. Well, people don't realize that helping somebody out is actually helping the collective. And um and that is just a way towards a better planet. Um and yeah, I believe in that.
yeah, that's the whole thing behind the show, right? For Stars from Nothing, I want to show, if somebody looks at the show, just like I look at other guys' stuff and be like, I can start something, or I can, Nick had his problems with alcohol and all this other shit, and he got it fixed. I can get it fixed too. It doesn't matter if you're SF or whatever the fuck you did. You're a civilian. You were in the military. You were a truck driver. You fucking were the supply sergeant or supply specialist, right? You can fucking figure it out. We can figure it out, and there's a lot of people willing to sit on the phone with you and help you, or just give you advice from your old community. So, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
I just want to help. I don't want some of the things that we have gone through because other people have made decisions to have other people make those decisions. So be positive. At least now that I got my shit together, you know, 14, 15 months ago, I didn't. I was a fucking douchebag. And now I don't want to be anymore. I want to be
Yeah.
good and help people. It's not about me, about everybody else. So
Yeah, for
that's what it
sure.
is. Fuck, man. I had a great time talking to you today. I got 5 questions for you. If you got time for wrap those up, and I'll cut you loose.
Yeah.
All right, man. What is your response to thank you for your service?
I almost said this earlier, is that um if it's in passing, if it's like a quick interaction, I'll thank the person for them saying that. Um, but if I have time to talk to someone, um, I'll say something similar to what I actually did say this earlier, is that I'm really thankful for the capacity that I was able to serve in, and um, the time frame that I was able to serve in, and um, yeah, that opportunity that I had. Um, and so I guess what I'm trying to convey is that, yeah, I'm really thankful for m- m- me being able to serve. Like, I'm thankful, but I do appreciate um, people uh, showing gratitude for service, um, and still recognizing that so many people are making sacrifices and things. And it kind of surprises me at times that, almost as if it reminds me that people haven't forgotten that people are making a lot of sacrifices, and they have made lots of sacrifices. Um, I'm not gonna lie, like, it feels a little bit uncomfortable at times, but I'm thankful for people appreciating other service.
Yeah. They just they're just trying to show appreciation, and you gotta do your best to convey that you appreciate their appreciation and nothing. They're not trying to be malicious or anything like some people take that as, like it's sarcastic or something like that.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add is that um, I'm not sure how to convey this. Uh, on Veterans Day, I spoke to our gym. It's kind of an impromptu thing, and um, I want people to know that they're worthy of it. Um, when someone says thank you for your service, I want them to know that they're worthy of that service, um, because we don't serve in the military for just a certain type of people or for people who look the same way we do or vote the same way we do. It's for everybody. It's for the person who is in a prison cell. It's for a person who's working in a factory or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's for everyone because they are worth it. So I think that's the only other thing that I would add.
I say similar things when I speak at the CrossFit gym on Hero WOD Day and things like that. So, all right. What is the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
The one characteristic. Wow, this is tough because I can think of a lot of different things, but if I had to pick one, I think it comes down to mindset. Um, Kind of some of the things that we said earlier is that, if there's an obstacle, you're trying to find a way to make it work. Um, if you have a mindset of wanting to do hard things, wanting to be around the best, and wanting to be a part of the best, you're going to find a way to get yourself there. And and I mean, a part of mindset is setting higher standards for you and others. And I'm trying to remember, there was a study where something along the lines of, I can't remember the exact details of it, but it was something like they took, um, say, high performing individuals, like this is just as an example. This is not the exact study, but say they took like a soft guy and put them in a conventional unit. And um, yeah, actually, no, scratch that. I'll just stick with mindset. I'll just stick
Okay.
with, yeah. I think it comes down to, um, yeah. There's so many aspects to mindset and how you view things. And man, I heard this. This is total mindset. I heard this the other day from Andrew Huberman, who said that there's two types of people. There's winners and losers. Like we all have hard things or difficult things that happen to us, but a loser will destroy themselves and or others, and a winner will change that into something positive, as in like, okay, this still sucks, but how can I be better? How can I grow from this? How can I turn this into something that makes me a better person? And I think that's a part of mindset. And so I think a lot of it comes down to that. Um, is that there's just a different mindset.
I'm starting to think that from doing this that there's only one type of person, and it is choice. Everything comes down to choice. That person exists and doesn't exist. The Nick that has a drinking problem and doesn't have a drinking problem
Mm.
bifurcates at choice. I'm the same person. I just choose one way or the other. There's only one type of person,
Yeah.
that it lies in the matrix, right? The problem is choice.
Yeah.
Problem or the solution is choice. But that's just from doing these interviews and stuff. That that shithead and the good person, they both exist in me at the same time, but it's just choice.
Yeah. I think another way of putting that is belief. Um, if you want to change the world, you need to change your beliefs, because I can speak to this from a spiritual context. I think it's the greatest example, but to keep things kind of like more scientific, is that um, whatever you believe is going to translate over into how you behave, and then however you behave is going to be what you become. And so, if I have a belief that, um, what's a good example of this? Um, this is non-military related, but if I have a belief that something outside of me I need something outside of me to have value or to feel whole, you will always be left disappointed. And maybe for a little bit you may find happiness or something, but if you don't internally know that you have value, regardless of whatever somebody says to you or whatever possessions you have or don't have, then um, yeah, you're going to, both of those are going to dictate how you behave, and ultimately what you become. And um, yeah, and so if you have something hard, some kind of struggle in life, and here, this is the perfect example. I'm a strong believer of this, is that, and this is my belief, is that nothing happens to us. I believe everything happens for us, especially the most difficult things, the hardest things that we do. And so if I believe that everything happens to or for us, if I believe everything happens for us, it's for our benefit, then I'm going to behave a whole lot differently than the person who says, this happened to me. Can you believe that uh, she divorced me, or that um, my car broke down, or they fired me, or whatever? Like, you can take each one of these things, and depending on what you believe, will you know will determine the person that you're going to become and how you will behave. And both of those impact the world, one, I believe, in a positive way, and one in a negative way. um, and so, and like what you're saying, that's a choice. You're making a choice to determine, like, is this for my benefit, or am I going to wallow in my own pity and um, you know be self-destructive or hurt others? And yeah.
What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive or redo, but it won't change where you are now?
Relive or redo. Try to live my life with no regrets. um so it'd probably have to be, oh man, uh trying to think which path I want to take on this. um Man, there's things that I could redo. um that I could. Hmm. I'll go ahead and answer this way. Um, it's kind of a dark path, I feel like, but oh man, it's a long story, and I know we've already gone long, so I'll make it short. Is that at the end of a mission, um, some of the guys we had supporting us, that we're setting in like a cordon position or whatever for this target that we hit. And we flew back to our fire base where they were driving back. And the initial plan was for the element that um, had set in the cordon positions that they were going to drive back, and they were going to drive back at night. And I can remember asking my team leader after the mission, I was like, hey, they're still driving back at night, right? And he's like, no, they're going to drive back. They're going to sleep tonight since we've been up for 36 hours or something. He's like, they're going to sleep tonight and then drive first thing in the morning. And there's a part of me that it's like the one time that I didn't do this, like that conversation, had it come up before, I would have really pushed on it and said like, hey, like you got to talk to them and let them know to drive, wait till night, either drive tonight or wait till the next period of darkness. And for some reason I just didn't say anything, and I didn't push back on that. I would redo that. I would yeah, I would push back on that, because ultimately, because I mean I can say this, but I can't say this for sure, but I do know that they did drive back in the day, and yeah, several of those guys got killed, and I feel like it was because they went during the day versus at night. And I mean, I probably could think of a lot of situations like that, but I also have to believe, um, I feel for the families and all of that, and definitely their loved ones that were impacted. And, but I do believe that everything is so divinely orchestrated that um, everything happens the way it was supposed to happen, even if I don't like the outcome. And so there's probably a couple situations like that where it's like, man, especially if you've ever seen the families, if you gone to the funerals of service member killed, it's just gut wrenching. It's extremely tragic. And um, so um, yeah, I say that, but I do believe that things happened the way they were supposed to happen. So as much as I don't like it, but yeah,
We're left to live with it, right?
yeah.
Um, what's the best piece of advice that you received during your career?
I've been asked this before, and the last time I didn't give a very good answer. I felt like, you know, uh, you know, I'm not real sure in terms of
I can
piece.
I can tell you what it should be
What's
based
that?
on, because I have the same answer. Because your family member told you don't volunteer for anything, and when I got to my unit, this specialist, as a throwaway comment, said you don't want to stand out here. And that's all I did was stand out. And it took me very far. It was an
Uh-huh.
opposite advice. So the best piece of advice I ever got was contrary. And as soon as I put the opposite into effect, I took off. So
Yeah,
just from listening to your story, the
yeah,
best piece of advice is the worst piece of advice somebody gave you, is what your uncle said to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I said, it was probably useful during their time frame, and being drafted and probably put in some really shitty situations that maybe they really didn't want to be in, but were doing the best that they could. Um, but yeah, for me, like you said, volunteering for everything seemed to work out the best. So, um, yeah, I'll go with that one. That sounds good.
When you said it, I was like, that's exactly what, happened to me. Same thing. Don't stand out here. Well, fuck you. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So it worked out for me. All right, man. Last one. What were you afraid of then? And what are you afraid of now?
Afraid of then was letting down my teammates, doing anything that would ever failing them in any way. Um, that was probably my greatest fear. Um, now, um, I try not to live with much fear at all. And there's a lot of like my healing journey that has led to this, and a lot of work that I've done on myself is that I don't I don't fear death. The only thing that um, I have feelings about is that it could be painful, you know. So I mean, it could be painless going out, or might not feel the best, but otherwise, have no fear of that. Um, honestly, I try and stay away from fear as much as possible because, and because I have a lot of spiritual beliefs around this. Is that I don't think we're intended to stay in fear. I'm a very competitive person, and if I believe that there is very much good and evil in this world, and and I know some people, you've seen some of it on on targets, and you don't have to necessarily see this in um, guys in combat, but I do believe that there's a light and a dark, and if this evil or darkness wants me to be in fear and anger and hatred and all of these like really negative emotions, um, I think we have that option to go to that place. But my competitiveness is like, okay, if I can stay out of that and be in a space of love, compassion, joy, and peace and kindness, then I'm winning. And like that's my competitive side of things, because I don't think that we're designed to stay in a fear state. And I think anything that is putting us in fear, it's it can be around divisiveness or whatever, but ultimately is driving us away from our connection with our creator. And I will tell you, it's not that I don't get afraid of things. I still do, but I'll give you an example. I try and change that feeling to a positive feeling. An example was I was with my son. We left work one day, and maybe we are going to grab lunch. We're stopped at a stoplight, and I can see a dude who is strung out of his mind, maybe a homeless guy, and he's kind of like talking to the air, and in his angry and just whacked out of his mind. And I can see he's kind of moving closer and closer to my truck, and my son is on his side. My son's in the passenger seat on the side of where this guy's at, and so part of me went into this like almost like fear state of I've got to protect my son, and I've got to be on alert for what this guy possibly could do. And I try and catch myself in as much of these as I can. If ever I'm feeling anger or fear or judgment, I want to switch that to, okay, I want to be in a loving space, and how can I instead of being in a fear-based state, have a loving response and not afraid of this guy. And I'm not saying this is like what will happen every time, but as soon as like I had that thought and started to switch that in my brain, um, this guy totally lost interest in us and then started moving in a whole different direction. And so there's a lot of things that I don't want to have happen, but I try to be as open to whatever the experience is going to be on earth, say yes to it and accept that it is whole, and uh, try and shift anything away from fear today.
That sounds like you're doing a good job. Chris Thompson, KLENR Products, Soap, Sundries, and Adventures. How can everybody find you on the social medias if they so choose?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram the most. My Instagram is at chris.radiant. For KLENR, I run that KLENR page too on Instagram, which is at KLENR Products, which is KLENR Products. And then I'm on Facebook from time to time, that kind of thing, but mainly Instagram. Yeah.
Really enjoyed talking to you. That time, 3:40, that flew by. I will have links to your socials up in the show description. You got anything for me, man?
I just appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you having other SF guys come on and share their stories. And um, I think it's super important, and I think we need to be able to have this to where people can access it for the long term. And because once everybody goes, if those stories aren't kept somewhere, then they're gone. So yeah, I appreciate you reaching out to me, man, and asking me about the podcast and everything you're doing.
I do my little part. I appreciate you, man, for coming on. Thank you again. Bye, everybody.